Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Pirate, I will become stronger by checking in on the plot island. Chapter 61. When Zoro and Sanji eliminated Mr. 3, Nami and Usopp also met two people they didn't want to meet. Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine's Day. The four of them stood face to face, with expressions on their faces that made it difficult to tell what they were thinking. How did you meet them? What should you do? Nami gestured to Usopp with her eyes. You asked me who I asked. Usopp replied with the same look. Even though they have been training these days, especially Usopp, he can be said to be the hardest working one among them all. But effort does not necessarily mean strength. And even though their strength has improved now, their cowardly character for so long is still deeply affecting them. For a moment, the two of them froze on the spot, not knowing what to do. While the two of them were troubled, little did they know that Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine were even more troubled than them on Valentine's Day. They also saw the scene where Sha Chen fought with two giants just now. As outstanding members of Baroque Studio, they made the same decision as Mr. 3. Run away. It can only be said that we are not a family, and we do not enter the same family. Even when they were escaping, they were still glad that it was not Sha Chen who fought with them at Whiskey Peak last time, otherwise they would have survived. But while running, they were forced to receive good news and bad news. Bad news. I met someone from the Straw Hat Pirates. Good news. There is no bounty on these two people. They look like two weak chickens. 2 against 2, the advantage lies with them. In that case, Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine looked at each other, and then they instantly turned around and wanted to knock these two people down. But what caught their eyes were two small ammunition packets flying towards them. Subconsciously, they attacked the two ammunition. The moment it hits the ammunition explodes instantly. This is of course no big deal to Mr. 5 because he ate the explosive fruit, but it is not so friendly to Miss Valentine's Day. It immediately blew her into disgrace. Mr. 5 waved away the smoke caused by the explosion in front of his eyes. As soon as he regained his sight, he saw a sledgehammer zooming in front of his eyes. Miss Nami also took a stick and hit her hard on Valentine's Day, past. Bang, bang, the two of them flew backwards at the same time and fell heavily to the ground. I must kill them. Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine were both furious, but before they could get up, two more ammunition packs flew towards them, and Usopp's voice also sounded not far away. Pepper Star. After hearing this, the two people immediately felt that something bad was going to happen, and struggled to stand up, but it was too late at this time. Two chilly stars just hit them in the face. Instantly, a burning pain came from their faces. It was so hot that they felt that their skin was about to ulcerate. Rolling on the ground. Naturally, Usopp and Nami would not miss such a good opportunity. Take advantage of his illness and kill him. This is what Sha Chen said to them most often during the battle. The two of them ran up to them, beating hard with hammers and sticks like gangsters fighting in the street. At this time, Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine were beaten and felt like they were going to die of suffocation. They feel that their methods have not been used yet, and they are in this situation for no reason. The problem is that now they have no strength to resist. Under Usopp and Nami's storm-like offensive, they feel that their consciousness is slowly disappearing. At the moment when I fainted, there was only one thought in my mind. I'm not willing to give in. Usopp and Nami's offensive did not stop because they fainted, they continued to attack hard, and they did not stop until they were a little exhausted. Shouldn't they be able to get up? Usopp sat down on the ground and asked, panting. Next to him, Nami was also very tired and replied intermittently. Looking at them, they look like this, they probably can't get up. At this time, Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine's bodies were extremely swollen and covered in bruises, especially their two faces, whose original appearance was completely unrecognizable. The two of them just rested where they were. After a while, Usopp's sudden laughter startled Nami next to him, and he couldn't help but said angrily. Usopp, what are you doing? I suddenly felt that these enemies that seemed very strong before were actually not as strong as we thought. Just like this time, we defeated someone who we thought we couldn't win no matter what. After saying that, Usopp clenched his fist and spoke again after a few seconds. Through this battle, I can clearly feel that my strength has improved. Not only physically, but also mentally. I now have the courage to challenge the seemingly invincible enemy. I will become more and more brave in the future. One day, I will become a brave sea warrior. When he said this, Usopp stood up and shouted. Nami on the side looked at this scene blankly, and after a long time said, "You will definitely do it." Then stood up and continued walking towards their previous destination. Let's go and see what's going on over there. The fighting has not stopped until now. Time goes back to when Sha Chen had just beaten Dongli and Brigi out. Looking at the two people standing up again, Sha Chen chuckled and said, "You two, how about you let me feel the pressure?" Dongli and Brigi were both startled when they heard this, and then Brigi sneered, "Boy, are you crazy? I'm only 16 years old, uncle. Can you stop being crazy?" Sha Chen responded with a big white fang grin. 16 years old. So young. Isn't that even a fraction of our age? That's the truth, so you know, if you lose too badly, your face won't look good. Dongli raised his eyebrows when he heard this. You mean the two of us will definitely lose? It's just a matter of misfortune or not? That's right, Sha Chen replied calmly. Interesting. Since you are so confident, let's give it a try. Having said that, Dongli and Brigi attacked Sha Chen at the same time. Due to their size advantage, the two of them arrived in front of Sha Chen in a very short time. The axe and sword slashed at Sha Chen at the same time. Sha Chen stood there without making any movement, but the corners of his mouth raised slightly. Clang! The sound of collision was heard, and Dongli and Brigi had expressions of surprise on their faces. They saw that their axes and swords did not hit Sha Chen at all, but hit a bloody defensive shield surrounding Sha Chen. That's right, this is the master created by Sha Chen. Don't be afraid. It's just that a little change occurred in the demonized state. First of all, the defensive shield turned into blood under the infection of murderous aura, and secondly, it has one more small function than the original one. Sha Chen opened his mouth slightly. Bounce. In an instant, a powerful force burst out from Sha Chen's defensive shield, directly knocking Dongli and Brigi away. Now Sha Chen's defensive shield, as long as it is not strong enough to break it, will rebound with whatever force is used, which is not just a little bit stronger than before. However, there is a limitation that this effect can only be achieved in the demonized state, not under normal circumstances. In fact, Sha Chen and Dongli didn't plan to use forms when they were fighting, but there was no way. People didn't believe him, so they had to use forms to prove it. The consequence after opening the form is that their strength is no longer at the same level now. They can't even break his shield, and beating him doesn't even count as scraping him, and he has an anti-armor effect. After a while, before he could take action, they had already killed him. Sha Chen dispersed the defensive shield and said to the two of them, "Let's bypass these boring battles and just use your combined attack skills. I'm really looking forward to the power of your combined attack skills." After hearing this, the two people first looked at each other, and then looked at Sha Chen at the same time. Dong Li asked, "Are you sure you want us to use the combined attack technique? It is very powerful. It's good if it's powerful, but it's boring if it's not powerful." Hearing what Sha Chen said, the two of them did not hesitate anymore, because they also knew that without the use of combined attack skills, they would not be Sha Chen's opponents at all, and they were not even qualified to fight with him. The two of them could only compete with Sha Chen in terms of the power they unleashed from their combined attack skills. In this case, don't die. After saying that, Dongli and Brigi stood on one side, holding their swords and axes high. In an instant, the aura of the two of them continued to grow stronger. When it reached a peak, the two of them simultaneously picked up the weapons in their hands and waved forward. Hegemony. A powerful attack burst out from the intersection of the two weapons, and at the same time, the two weapons collapsed at the same time. Seeing the attack coming towards him, Sha Chen's face showed excitement. "Can you feel such a strong pressure from such a distance? Come on, let me see the value of the hegemony." After saying that, a bloody arrogance enveloped the stick in Sha Chen's hand, and then struck hard at the incoming attack. Great Weed Thunder 8 trigrams. Boom. The moment the two attacks came into contact, a devastating wave came from the center of the battle, and the powerful aftermath lifted up the surrounding land layer after layer. "Drink. Give me. Break." After holding on for more than 10 seconds, Sha Chen roared and used force again, smashing the overlord to pieces. "Ha ha ha. The power is indeed strong enough. Sha Chen said after laughing loudly. On the other hand, Dongli and Brigitte on the opposite side looked dull and did not react for a long time. The overlord was defeated frontally. Even though they had seen this situation with their own eyes, they still couldn't believe it. No one knew the power of the overlord better than the two parties involved. In the past, no matter what difficulties they encountered, they could use this trick to defeat the enemy, but now he was actually resisted by a 16-year-old boy. Is it because they are old? They can no longer carry the knife. It doesn't make sense. And Sha Chen here also released the demonized form after taking this move, and at the same time he also made a judgment in his heart. The power of the overlord did not seem to be as powerful as he imagined. Although he had used all his strength to resist the overlord this time, he would not be able to stop it if it were any stronger. But the problem is that he thought he was unstoppable. After all, hegemony has only appeared twice, and both times had shocking effects. The first time I used this move to kill the island-eating monster on the west side of the island, the Goldfish King. The second time was even more shocking, directly wiping out the entire Kid Pirates. At that time, it caused a great shock to Sha Chen. But now that he has personally experienced the power of this move, he has a different idea. At that time, the two main members of the Kid Pirates, Kid and Kira, were instantly killed by the red-haired Dodge. The remaining members did not have much role at all, and it is not known how strong they are. Moreover, this move of the overlord at that time only cut their ship directly open, so the specific power was unknown and could only be guessed. But now he knows. Although he doesn't know how strong his strength is after turning on the demonized state, it is expected to be at the level of the Emperor's deputy at best, or even worse. At least now, if he were asked to fight Ka-er, he would most likely not be able to beat him, but it shouldn't be too different. During this time, he also roughly understood how the system classified domineering levels. For example, the color of foreseeing the future like card 2 is the top level of knowledge, which is the next level after advanced. He is only at the intermediate level of appeal now, which is 2 levels behind him. How can he fight? And as expected, Kaji's armament has reached a high level. This can be seen from the fact that when he fought with Luffy, he beat Luffy until his hands shook. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that his strength was greatly improved after being transformed into a demon, he wouldn't dare to compare himself with Ka-er. It seems that he was really merciful during the battle with Hawkeye. Now that Sha Chen has seen the power of Ba Guo, the next combined attack skill he is looking forward to is Ba Hai. The power of Ba Hai must be much stronger than that of Ba Guo. After all, this is the combined attack skill of 4 emperors. And you can tell which one is more powerful from the name. One is the country and the other is the sea. Dominating a country or dominating the sea, can you tell which one is more awesome, right? But if you want to experience the power of this move, you don't have the opportunity for the time being. Sha Chen slowly fell to the ground. As soon as he landed, Luffy ran towards him. Sha Chen, you were so handsome just now. Really, actually, I think so too. Sha Chen responded with a big white fang, and then said, now that this battle is over, it's time to deal with other chores. After saying that, Sha Chen closed his eyes and released the domineering energy of seeing and hearing, and felt it with all his strength. After a while, he opened his eyes, with a strange look on his face. He originally wanted to go and catch all the members of the Baroque studio on the island, but he didn't expect to find that they were all lying on the ground now, looking like they didn't know whether to live or die. Combined with the several people now appearing in his sight, he suddenly had a conclusion in his mind. It seems that the practice during this period is still very useful. You must know that in the original work, the Straw Hats were tortured by Mr. 3 and others, but now they have been able to deal with them so easily. In this regard, Sha Chen put on the classic mask of asking for credit. It's all his credit. The 4 Zoro people also came to Sha Chen at this time. Looking at the devastated land, they couldn't help but curiously asked, what happened? The battle had already ended before they got here, so they only knew that there was a lot of movement here, but they didn't know what the specific situation was. Oh, it was just a fight. Fight? What kind of fight can cause such power? Nami exclaimed, then immediately reacted and asked hesitantly, it can't be you, right? Sha Chen nodded. In an instant, everyone except Luffy, who watched the whole thing, looked at him in shock. Although they know that Sha Chen is very strong and are mentally prepared, is this situation a little exaggerated? Sha Chen looked at their expressions, and then looked at the bare land around him. He was a little embarrassed. If Dongli and Brigitte fought, they would have to fight many times to cause such damage. It stuck. Speaking of Cao Cao, when Cao Cao arrived, Brigitte and Dongli also walked towards them at this time, and at the same time let out a burst of devilish laughter. Boy, you are very powerful. There are not many people who can take over the hegemony head-on. Oh, Uncle Giant, thank you for accepting my request to fight and letting me have a great time. This is the wine I promised you in advance. After saying that, Sha Chen threw out a dozen barrels of wine and flew towards them. Huh, Sha Chen, what kind of wine is that? Zoro asked in confusion. Wine, you can't get it from Whiskey Peak, right? Yeah, what's wrong? Sha Chen was a little confused, and Zoro suddenly asked why. Unexpectedly, Zoro became furious after hearing Sha Chen's affirmative answer. It turns out it's you, the wine thief. Hey, pay attention to your wording. Can the deputy captain's thing be called stealing? I was just borrowing it, okay. Zoro ignored what Sha Chen said, but still stared at him angrily, and then said angrily, when I was tired after practicing there, I wanted to go to them and ask for some wine. But they told me that all their wine had been stolen. I thought they were lying to me and simply didn't want to give me a drink. But when I put a knife on his neck, they still said the same thing. I only then did I believe them. It has made me unable to drink wine for so many days. In fact, these are not problems. The most important thing is, why didn't you take me with you when you stole the wine? Sha Chen, everyone. Sha Chen thought just now that Zoro's heart of justice was suddenly infected. Did this kind of thing come from the mouth of a pirate like him? Unexpectedly, in the end, he just complained about him for not taking him with him to do good things. Tisk, he is indeed a real pirate. Then now that I know everything, you can't give me a few barrels. At this moment, Zoro revealed his purpose. Sha Chen looked at him doubtfully. I stole it based on my ability. Oh, no, I borrowed it. Why should I share it with you? You're thinking shit. Whenever you can defeat me, come and negotiate terms with me. After some time, everyone gathered together to happily drink wine and eat meat, creating a lively scene. Suddenly, Nami asked Dongli, Uncle Giant, do you know how long it will take for the magnetism of this island to be fully charged? Let me think about it. It seems like it will take a year. 1 year, everyone exclaimed when they heard this, especially Vivi, whose face turned pale at this moment. In a year's time, Alabasta will be gone. Maybe by the time she returns, the grass on her father's grave will be several meters high. When she thought of this, her whole body collapsed to the ground, and her eyes suddenly lost their sparkle. Seeing this situation, Sha Chen suddenly remembered something, and then his figure disappeared instantly. When he reappeared, he was already outside the wax house made by Mr. 3. Without hesitation, Sha Chen opened the door and walked in. The scene that greeted him almost made his eyes pop out. At this time, at the table inside, a sea otter and an ostrich were drinking tea leisurely with their eyes closed, with expressions of enjoyment on their faces. He didn't even know Sha Chen came in. In response to this, Sha Chen said speechlessly, Unlucky duo, your living conditions are quite good, you all drink Earl Grey tea. Sha Chen's voice startled the two beasts who were cultivating their sentiments. The teacup in their hands fell directly to the ground in excitement, and then looked at Sha Chen angrily and assumed an attack posture. The corners of Sha Chen's mouth rose slightly. Bang! Bang! Sha Chen didn't favor one over the other. After giving them both a beast and a punch, they fell asleep comfortably. Then Sha Chen walked up to them and started searching them. Don't get me wrong, this is not because he has any special hobbies, but because. Sha Chen looked at the permanent record pointer in his hand and smiled, then he flashed and disappeared again. When he returned, he saw a group of people gathered around to comfort Vivi, but no matter what they said, Vivi's expression did not change at all, and she still looked lifeless. A bunch of noobs, no use for birds, look at me. Sha Chen walked slowly to Vivi, then took out what he had just obtained, and said to Vivi, this is Alabasta's permanent record pointer. For an instant, everyone froze on the spot, staring blankly at the permanent record pointer on Sha Chen's hand. Especially Vivi, the light in her eyes slowly turned from dim to bright, and finally extremely hot. When he got excited, he hugged Sha Chen and kept saying relevant words such as thank you. After everyone calmed down, Sanji asked curiously, where did you come from? Find it from a member of Baroque Studio. When Sanji heard this, he instantly felt that he had lost 10 billion. Why didn't he touch the body after they defeated Mr. 3 just now? If it was the permanent record pointer he found, he was the one Vivi hugged just now. Blood loss. But if Sha Chen knew Sanji's idea, he would definitely sneer. Mr. 3 doesn't have this thing on him. Even if you take off all his clothes, it will be useless. If he hadn't activated the profit hook, he wouldn't have known that the unlucky duo would come with Alabasta's permanent record pointer. So I still have to sigh, it's the uncle who cheats. This way we can go directly to Alabasta. Without further ado, let's set off later. Nami said, but for some reason she suddenly felt a little pain in her stomach and he hissed unconsciously. Miss Nami, what's wrong with you? Sanji, who had been paying attention to Nami and Vivi, was the first to discover this situation. It's nothing, just a bug bite, Nami said nonchalantly. And this sentence also attracted the attention of Sha Chen on the side. He walked over and looked at the insect bite marks on Nami's belly, and couldn't help but show an ugly expression on his face. Said word for word. Cassia. Unexpectedly, Nami did not only wear a bra like in the original work this time, but only exposed a little bit of her belly and was bitten by Cassia. Now she is in trouble. Cassia, what is that? Nami asked curiously. Sha Chen did not answer her question immediately, but looked at her and said seriously, we have to find an island with a doctor first. You have to see a doctor. See a doctor? There's no need. It's just a bug bite. It's not a big problem. Our top priority now is to quickly go to Alabasta and help Vivi quell the rebellion in the kingdom. Yes, Sha Chen, I was often bitten by bugs when I was a child. It's no big deal, Luffy also said at the side. You have to go, Sha Chen said again, with an unquestionable meaning in his tone, and then slowly explained. Cassia is the name of the bug that bites you. The bug's germs can lie dormant in the human body for 5 days, causing high fevers over 40 degrees, severe infections, myocarditis, arteritis and encephalitis. At this point, Sha Chen paused, glanced at everyone and then said in a solemn tone, if you don't get effective treatment within 5 days, then once the 5 days are up, Nami, you will die, so this disease is also it's called the 5-day sickness. Now, do you understand the seriousness of the problem? Will you die? Everyone around him shouted in disbelief with horrified expressions on his face. Nami's face turned pale instantly. You mean, I will die? It will happen if you don't get treatment within 5 days. Sha Chen nodded. No, it's impossible. I feel like my wound is nothing but a little painful. How could I die? Nami retorted, but her tone was filled with panic and unconfidence. Then she looked at everyone and asked. You think so? Her answer didn't get a response from anyone, and even Luffy's face became unusually heavy at this time. As they have been with Sha Chen for so long, they believe 100% in Sha Chen. Although Sha Chen is not a doctor, what Sha Chen said along the way has never been wrong, and it should not be wrong this time either. Exception. Nami actually knows this very well, but she just doesn't want to believe it. Anyone who hears that she still has 5 days to live will be devoured by fear. Not to mention that they are still in a place like the Grand Line, and the pointer cannot go anywhere without a record. The chance of finding an island in this way is already very small, and it is even more difficult to find an island with a doctor. In an instant, Nami's face turned pale and she fell to the ground, her mind in chaos. At this moment, Sha Chen put his hand on her head and touched her. What's your expression? I just said you will die if you don't get treatment within 5 days. Then if you get treatment, you won't die. Sha Chen's faint voice made Nami's dim eyes brighten up instantly, but in the blink of an eye she thought of something and her mood dropped again. It is too difficult and impossible to find an island with a doctor in this sea within 5 days. I said if there's a way, there's a way. Sha Chen's firm voice came. It restored hope to Nami's originally silent heart. She may not necessarily believe other people's guarantees, but she definitely believes in Sha Chen. Sha Chen is not a person who makes promises casually without being sure. Sha Chen was originally in a heavy mood because he couldn't guarantee that they would be able to find Sigu Island. In the original work, the Straw Hats found Drum Island by accident, and there was no guidance from the recorded pointer at all. But now they are not in the anime, but they are actually in the Great Waterway in the sea where all common sense does not apply. If he did it again, he really couldn't guarantee that he would be as lucky as the original to find Drum Island. If he couldn't find it, he would really be doomed. After all, any current can cause a ship to deviate from its course. But something he suddenly thought of made his originally heavy heart relax. Somersault cloud. This was the way he came up with to find Sigu Island. Since the group of people found Sigu Island within 3 days in the original book, the distance between Sigu Island and the small garden was not particularly far. In this case, he would have a solution. With his ultimate speed of 100 kilometers per second, he could completely search the sea area around the small garden, so that he would not believe that he could not find it. Thinking of this, Sha Chen said directly to Nami, "Nami, give me the record pointer of this island." "Oh, okay." Nami took off the record pointer on his wrist and gave it to Sha Chen. The pointer points in the direction of the small garden, so that he can ensure that he can find his way back when he finds Drum Island. Without further ado, Sha Chen directly told them to wait for him for a while, then flew into the sky on a somersault cloud, turning into a stream of light and dissipating in the sky, without explaining much to them. An hour later, Sha Chen was still flying in the sky, his piercing eyes were activated to the extreme. Otherwise, at such a fast speed, he would not be able to see the island clearly and fly over. As he was flying, Sha Chen's figure stopped and looked at an island with a huge round peak in the distance and smiled. Found it. Sha Chen once again urged the somersault cloud to fly to the magnetic Drum Island. He looked at the direction of the recording pointer in his hand. He only needed to come back in this direction later. There are actually 2 choices before him now. One is to bring Dr. Kuleha over to treat Nami, and the other is to go back and bring Nami and the others over. But obviously, the second option is more reliable. Dr. Kuleha has a very weird temper. He may not be able to convince her to go with him, but what if she refuses to treat Nami if he uses force? And she also has a civet cat there that they want to board the ship with, so all things considered, the second option is better. In this case, Sha Chen decided to go back and bring them here now. However, at the moment he was about to leave, a system notification sounded in his mind. Ding, I checked into Drum Island successfully and got clone ability, powerful moves to dominate the sea. As the electronic sound ended, a stream of memories flooded into Sha Chen's mind, and at the same time he felt that he had learned something inexplicably. When all the movement fell silent, Sha Chen stood there in a daze, then became ecstatic and even jumped up on the spot. This really can't be blamed on him being so easily excited because he has never seen the world. It's really that the things he got this time were so luxurious that he couldn't restrain his behavior. Let's talk about the move Bahai first. This is actually very simple. It's the Bahai he knows, Kaido's mother's combined attack technique. This move is undoubtedly a very powerful move, but it also has certain limitations, that is, it must be performed by 2 people. If there is only one person, this move will seem a bit useless. But the first thing I checked in this time solved this problem perfectly. The clone ability, this skill is simply a magical skill in Sha Chen's opinion, and even gives him the illusion that a move of the level of Bahai is just a gift. The skill introduction of clone ability is as follows. The main body can separate into a clone with the same strength as the main body. When the clone is continued, the strength of all clones will decrease by 5% for each clone. The strength of the main body remains unchanged, and the positions of the clone and the main body can be changed at any time. Swap. This introduction may seem a little difficult to understand, but it's actually very simple. In other words, Sha Chen can create a clone with exactly the same strength as him. If another clone is created at this time, the strength of the 2 clones will be 95% of his original body. Another clone will be 90%, and so on. What is this concept? In other words, even if Sha Chen divides 11 clones now, each clone still has half of his strength, and each one can hang up the current straw hats and beat them over and over again. In fact, this is not a threat to the top powerhouses. After all, the lower the individual's strength, the easier it is to solve. But the problem is that he has a clone with exactly the same strength. Two of them fight one. Isn't this just a random act of bloodshed? When he grows to the level of 4 emperors, when he fights with others, they will have to face 2 4 emperors. How powerful are 2 4 emperors together? You can know this by referring to Kaido and Big Mom. When the two of them were together, the supernova cluster was tortured over and over again. In the end, they were separated and defeated one by one. And another very important thing is that the clone body can change its position. If he suddenly becomes much stronger while fighting, then the enemy's expression will be very exciting. All in all, this is a very powerful skill, enough to greatly improve his actual combat capabilities. Now that Segu Island has been found, and such good things have been checked in, Sha Chen is in a very good mood, humming a song, flying in the direction of the small garden on a somersault cloud. It took an hour to look for it, but it only took a dozen seconds to go back. Soon, Sha Chen was back in the small garden. Seeing Sha Chen's figure, everyone came up to greet him. Luffy first asked, "Sha Chen, how are you? Have you found the island?" "Found it." Sha Chen showed a smile. "Great." Everyone couldn't help but be happy when they heard the news, especially Nami, who was even more excited now. "Okay, without further ado, let's set off now," Sha Chen said to everyone, then turned to look at Dong Li and Brigitte. "Uncle Giant, we have to leave. See you again when we have a chance." Hearing Sha Chen's words, Dong Li also said, "Since this little girl is sick, we won't keep you here. It's a big deal to take good care of yourself as soon as possible." Only, at this point, Dong Li paused, and then continued, "If you want to go out, you should avoid the sea to the west. There is an island-eating monster there, the Goldfish King. It is so huge that I even landed on an island with its feces, so you can know how terrifying it is." Usopp was stunned when he heard this. Why did he feel that this plot sounded familiar? It seemed that he had bragged this story to someone before. Brigitte said, "If our weapons were still there, we could help you deal with it, but unfortunately, our weapons were broken when we fought with you just now." After hearing this, Sha Chen waved his hands and said, "We don't need to pass through that sea area, but since you said it, I'll go and solve it by the way. I just want to try my new move." After saying this, Sha Chen looked at everyone, and then showed a smile. "What should I say? Are you interested in taking a look?" After some time, everyone came to the shore of the Western Sea. Looking at the calm ocean in front of him, Sha Chen murmured, "It seems we have to lure it out first." After saying that, Sha Chen flew into the sky in a few moves, and then swung his right leg fiercely. Lanjiao Katiao. Don't ask why he has the same name as Lu Chi's move, just ask because he paid the copyright fee. A powerful slash landed on the distant sea in the blink of an eye, moment. Boom. The seawater in the attacked area was directly divided into 2 halves, and when the seawater flowed back, it splashed tens of meters high. Sha Chen landed on the shore of the island and waited quietly for the arrival of prey. After a few breaths, the originally calm sea surface began to become choppy. Gradually, a huge goldfish broke out of the water and stared at the people here eagerly. Everyone except Dong Li and Brigitte looked at this scene in shock, even Sha Chen was no exception. "Isn't the goldfish a little too big?" Sanji said in horror. "I have never seen such a big goldfish before." Zoro also sighed. "Did I brag so much when I was bragging?" Usopp said doubtfully. Next, everyone expressed their thoughts. Although the content of what they said was different, the final meaning was to lament the hugeness of this goldfish. Suddenly, Luffy shouted excitedly, "This goldfish is so fat. I wonder if the meat tastes good." Speaking of this, Luffy suddenly had a picture in his mind, and Halsey couldn't help but shed tears. Don't tell me, this is a good idea. I'll get some of its meat to taste after I kill it." After saying that, Sha Chen walked directly to the front, and then with a thought, a clone appeared next to him. Everyone who saw this scene later was shocked and wiped their eyes vigorously. They must have seen it wrong. How could there be 2 Sha Chen? But, why, Sha Chen, you turned into 2. Luffy shouted in horror. "I'll explain this to you later." Sha Chen looked at his clone, and a strange feeling arose spontaneously. It always felt like he was looking at himself. It's better to get familiar with this skill later. Now let him try the power of Bahai. The 2 Sha Chens stood side by side, one on the left and one on the right. The next second, a stick appeared in their hands at the same time. The clone ability can also clone the weapon, which is a bit awesome. Then the two Sha-Chens looked at the goldfish in front of them and raised the sticks in their hands. The next moment, Sha-Chen's eyes narrowed and he swung the sticks in his hands at the same time. Hi. An extremely powerful energy attack was triggered from the intersection of the two sticks, heading towards the Goldfish King in the distance with extremely powerful power. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly arrived in front of the Goldfish King. PFF. The sound of tearing flesh and blood was heard, and in just a moment, the middle part of the Goldfish King's body was directly penetrated, and large areas of flesh and blood were directly eliminated. Moreover, the dominance of the sea continued unabated, leaving an invisible trace on the sea surface. The nearby sea water became rough due to this move, setting off huge waves one after another. Oh, this is quite powerful. Sha-Chen smacked his lips and said as he looked at the scene caused by Bahai in front of him. Although his current strength is still far behind Big Mom and Kaido, the power of Hai is not weak, and it is currently his strongest attack method. Just as he watched, Sha-Chen suddenly discovered a problem. My goldfish meat. Sha-Chen immediately flew to the side of the Goldfish King on a somersault cloud. Countless slashes were continuously swung from his feet, cutting the Goldfish King continuously. After taking a large part of the meat into the system space, Sha-Chen directly kicked the rest. The Goldfish King's body kicked onto the shore. Since most of the meat was directly destroyed by Bahai, only a small part was left. Most of this small part was cut off by Sha-Chen. The remaining part was smaller in size than the original Goldfish King. I don't know how small it is already. But even so, it still occupied a large area when flying to the island. Sha Chenfei returned to the shore and said to Dongli and Brigi, "Uncle Giant, this is for you, let you taste the taste of the Goldfish King." But at this time, both Dongli and Brigi fell into a slightly sluggish state. After a while, they asked, "What did you do just now?" "Oh, my move is called Bahai, and it's also a combined attack technique." "I didn't expect that there is a combined attack technique that is more powerful than our overlord. The overlord we used is far less powerful than the overlord you used. Unfortunately, we thought our overlord was the strongest before. Yes, it seems we are sitting in a well looking at the sky." Brigi sighed. In fact, Sha-Chen really wanted to say that it's not that your hegemony is weak, it's just that your strength is a little bit inferior, but after thinking about it, he let it go. You can't be like this. Sha-Chen, can you tell me now why you can become two? Luffy ran over again and asked Sha-Chen excitedly. Compared to the powerful Bahai, he was still more concerned about this method of becoming two people, and the others were the same, all looking at him curiously. "Oh, there is a breakthrough in the fruit ability." Sha-Chen replied calmly. Although it is said that the clone skill is not brought to him by the improvement of fruit ability, he has no other explanation. "You can't say that it was given to me by the system, right? Anyway, his fruit is definitely not in the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, so it's not up to him to decide what abilities he has. He said it is fruit ability, that is fruit ability." When Luffy heard this, his heart suddenly became unbalanced. He curled his lips and said, "Why are your fruits so awesome and mine so good? Your fruit can not only hold things, but it can also change its shape, and it can also create clouds. It can also clone itself now, and I don't know what else it will have in the future. On the other hand, my fruit only has the ability to stretch, well." Luffy's jealous tone almost overflowed the screen. It was difficult for him, a person with a mediocre memory, to remember so many of Sha-Chen's abilities. "I can't help it. Who made my fruit a noble phantom beast?" Sha-Chen spread his hands and said pretentiously. "Phantom beast species? What type of fruit is this? You didn't seem to mention this when you told us last time, right?" Nami asked doubtfully. "The phantom beast species belongs to the animal family, but it is much stronger than the ordinary animal species. Each phantom beast species has incredible abilities. In short, it is very awesome." "Ah, why isn't mine a fantasy beast?" Luffy was a little disappointed. Incredible abilities, this sounds very interesting, okay. Upon hearing this, Sha-Chen glanced at him lightly, and then said, "Actually." Hiss. At this moment, an exclamation came from Nami, which attracted Sha-Chen's attention. He did not continue talking but instantly came to Nami and asked her, "What's wrong?" It's okay, it just stung suddenly. Nami's face turned a little pale, and there was a thin layer of sweat on her head. Sha Chen put his hand on Nami's forehead, and his face sank slightly. I can already feel a slight fever. It seems we can't delay it any longer and have to set off immediately. He didn't expect that Cassia would get sick so quickly. If he had known about it, he might not have killed the Goldfish King. Although it is said that this disease will take 5 days to die, people who develop the disease will have a very painful life and be extremely uncomfortable within 5 days. Sha Chen said to everyone, "Wait for me here." After saying that, Sha Chen took a somersault cloud and came to where the melee was. He jumped on board the Mary and said, "Somersault cloud, get bigger." After saying that, the somersault cloud began to slowly grow in size, and did not stop until it became a little larger than the Mary. He only discovered the function of the somersault cloud when he came to the small garden. At that time, when he obtained the armed color hockey, his strength was significantly improved. Then he felt that the somersault cloud seemed to be able to grow in size. Then he tried it and found that the somersault cloud could indeed get bigger, and the extent of the increase was still linked to his strength. The stronger he was, the bigger the somersault cloud would become. In fact, his strength had slightly improved during his own training before, but because the amplitude was too small, he did not notice the changes in the somersault cloud. With his current strength, the maximum transformation that somersault cloud can make is about 10 times that of the Mary. But what if he becomes stronger in the future? When the time comes, he will also build an island in the sky, which will be so awesome. Sha Chen controlled the somersault cloud and came under the Mary, lifted the entire ship of the Mary, and then appeared in front of Luffy and the others in an instant. A sudden strong wind made everyone stunned for a moment, and then they couldn't help but turn their heads to look. Everyone was amazed again, but this time Sha Chen simply explained and let them all board the boat. This time it was because the situation was urgent. If Nami's illness was delayed for a second longer, she would be in pain for a second longer, so Sha Chen decided to take a shortcut. If there was nothing urgent, it would be better to sail slowly on the sea, otherwise there would be no sense of experience. Wait a minute, One Piece will become the Sky Pirate King. After everyone got on the boat, the group briefly said goodbye to Dongli and the others, and then Sha Chen controlled the somersault cloud and flew towards Sugu Island at high speed. In just a short while, before everyone on the ship could react, the somersault cloud had already stopped above the Drum Island. "Are we here?" Usopp asked in confusion. "Yes." Sha Chen nodded, then turned to face the crowd and said, "I will control the somersault cloud to park the ship on the coast of Sugu Island later, and then you will find a way to get to the island on your own. After you get to the island, go to the tallest snow mountain in the middle to find me." After saying that, Sha Chen walked up to Nami, squatted down slightly, and said to her, "Come up here, I'll carry you to the doctor." "Oh, okay." Nami nodded, then lay on Sha Chen's back. Now Nami only has a slight fever and is in pretty good condition. "Well, let's see you later," Sha Chen said to everyone, then jumped from the high altitude with Nami on his back, and then used moonwalk to fly towards the snow-capped mountains. Why can't I learn moonwalk? If I learn moonwalk, I can carry Miss Nami on my back. Sanji clenched his fists and said unwillingly. Hey, Zoro next to him heard this and let out a disdainful laugh. Even if you learned moonwalk, who do you think Nami would let if you and Sha Chen learned moonwalk at the same time? These words were like a sharp blade piercing Sanji's chest, turning him to stone. It wasn't until a minute later that he came back to life, and then he slowly lit a cigarette and took a puff. Now that Miss Nami has been taken away by Sha Chen, there is no need to worry, you can take a break. Miss Vivi, you can also relax a little. You don't have to worry about Alabasta all the time, so now do you want to have something to eat and relax? Sanji said attentively next to Vivi with a heart-shaped look. Vivi ignored him, but held her chin with one hand, thinking, and then asked doubtfully, what did Sha Chen mean when he just said that you will find your own way to the island? Is it difficult to get to the island? Just as Vivi finished speaking, the sound of a ship entering the water was heard, and they had stopped in the sea near Sugu Island. Sha Chen should just say this casually, right? What's so difficult about this island? Usopp spread his hands. Speaking of, do you feel a little cold? Exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark. Half a minute later, everyone was standing on the deck again wearing thick clothes. Why is it so cold all of a sudden? Luffy asked with a trembling voice as he curled up and had a runny nose. This island should be a winter island, so the sea near here is also very cold. Vivi analyzed. Isn't this the weather Sha-Chen is talking about? Why is it so difficult to get to the island? Sanji said with a faint smile. Then without further delay, let's go up and find Sha-Chen and the others. Bang! Just as Sanji was about to leave, a bullet shot past his forehead, and at the same time, a voice sounded. Hands up. At this time, the other side. Sha-Chen has already arrived at the castle on the top of the snow mountain. Even though he has landed, Nami is still lying on Sha-Chen's back. Sha-Chen didn't pay attention to this detail. He came to the door of the castle. The door was open, so Sha-Chen walked in directly. Under Sha-Chen's perception, he could clearly sense that there was an aura in a certain room here. But he didn't know the specific situation clearly, so he didn't know whether it was Chopper or Dr. Kuleha. A minute later, Sha-Chen came to the door of a room and knocked gently. After a while, the door was opened, and what came into view was an old woman who looked a little old, but felt full of vitality. Sha-Chen looked at the old woman in front of him with a sunny smile and said, "Sister, the person on my back is sick. Can you please help me heal him?" Dr. Kuleha's eyes narrowed. This kid is going to cause trouble. Sha-Chen sat by the bed, looked at Nami who had fallen asleep, and reached out to touch her forehead. The fever doesn't go away that quickly. How long did it take? Kuleha walked in from the door and said to Sha-Chen. Then he sat on the stool next to him, picked up the wine bottle on the table, and started blowing on the bottle. Sha-Chen looked at Kuleha with gratitude in her eyes, took out several barrels of wine from the system space and put them aside and said to her, "Thank you sister for helping me, these wines can be regarded as my brother's thanks." Kuleha, who heard Sha-Chen call her sister again, looked at him with satisfaction, and then said, "Why are you so polite? One family doesn't talk about two families' affairs." Sha-Chen was stunned when he heard what Kuleha said. Is this sister's voice so powerful? Having read the original work, of course he knew the two sentences that Kuleha often said. One of them is, "Do you want to know my secret to staying young?" Another sentence is that I am only 139 years old. Combined with the fact that every time someone says she is old, she will kindly give that person a big mouth and like to eat, Kuleha is a person who cares about her age. So Sha-Chen took a bite of her sister when he saw her for the first time. What happened next went smoothly beyond his expectation. Kuleha helped Nami heal without saying a word. Now she even said to Sha-Chen that one family does not speak the same language as two families, which shows how satisfied she is with Sha-Chen. As for Sha-Chen, would it be uncomfortable for a 16-year-old to call a 139-year-old grandmother sister? In contrast, Sha-Chen just wanted to say, absolutely not. In his previous life, he called everyone more than 20 years older than him sister, and everyone else was called younger sister. He has long been used to it. By the way, how did this little girl get bitten by Cassia? Didn't this kind of insect become extinct more than 100 years ago? Did she run around naked in the ancient island? Well, Sha-Chen said with a little shame, it's not like running naked, but it is indeed a tour around the ancient island. It was Kuleha's turn to be surprised when she heard this. How is that possible? Judging from her physical condition, it has only been a few hours since she was bitten, and you have arrived here within a few hours. When did the ancient island exist nearby? Maybe it's a little further away. Sha-Chen said with a smile. Kuleha narrowed her eyes, took a deep look at Sha-Chen, and then said nothing. She is not a person who is interested in other people's affairs, as long as the other person has no ill intentions, and she has lived for so many years, she still thinks that she has some ability to recognize people. What he felt in Sha-Chen was only kindness, no malice. Just knowing this is enough. At this moment, a voice sounded outside the door. Mother Gulewa, I'm back. Hearing this voice, the corners of Sha-Chen's mouth rose slightly. Finally, we can see the civet cat on their ship in the future who has the 4 identities of pet, mount, warm baby, and emergency food. After a while, a reindeer wearing a pink top hat, able to walk like a human, and with a blue nose walked in. Oh, Chopper, where have you been? Dr. Gulewa, Just as Chopper was about to say something, He caught a glimpse of a figure from the corner of his eyes, and then he looked over curiously, just in time to meet Sha Chen's full-mouthed figure. Interested eyes met. In an instant, Chopper ran to the door, exposed most of his body, nodded and huddled inside to look at Sha Chen. Sha Chen laughed out loud when he saw this scene. He originally thought Chopper's action was very interesting when watching the anime, but he didn't expect it to be even more interesting now that he actually saw it. Sha Chen looked at him and chuckled. You seem to be hiding. A few drops of cold sweat instantly broke out on Chaoba's forehead, and then he moved his body inside step by step, revealing a little bit and looking at Sha Chen. Sha Chen smiled again. There's no use hiding now. Kuleha looked at Chopper and said, Chopper, don't be afraid, come in, he won't hurt you. After hearing this, Chaoba slowly and tentatively walked in step by step, looking at Sha Chen warily every step he took. Seeing this scene, Sha Chen laughed dumbly. Chopper is really afraid of life now. Has he been hurt too much by humans before? Thinking of this, Sha Chen took out something from his system space and said to Chopper, Yes, I won't do anything to you. On the contrary, I will give this to you. As he said this, Sha Chen shook the thing in his hand again. After seeing the thing in Sha Chen's hand, Chopper's eyes instantly lit up, staring at the pink marshmallow that looked delicious. Sha Chen handed it to Chaoba. As soon as Chaoba took it, he couldn't wait to take a lick. After feeling the sweet taste, his eyes curled up. Then politely said, Thank you. You're welcome. Sha Chen still had a smile on his lips. The more he looked at Chopper in front of him, the more he liked it. He really wanted to stroke it. Sha Chen thought so, and of course he did so. The moment Sha Chen's hand touched Chopper, Chopper's whole body trembled, and the whole reindeer jumped up, and then quickly hid behind Kuleha. What are you doing? Chopper had a look of anger on his face. The marshmallow before was used to confuse him, right? Was it because he wanted to harm him? I just think you are too cute and want to touch you. Huh, Chopper's angry expression froze on his face, and then he blinked in confusion. Then, even if you say I'm cute, I won't be happy. Chopper twisted his waist, with a happy expression on his face, and said words that did not match his mood. Sha Chen laughed again. It will definitely become very interesting to have this arrogant little tanuki on the ship in the future. After a while, Chaoba stopped being so proud and looked at Sha Chen doubtfully. Aren't you scared when you see me talking? Why are you afraid? Sha Chen asked calmly. Because I am a reindeer, but I can talk and walk like humans, and I also have a blue nose. Chopper felt a little depressed when he said this. Due to the above characteristics, he is not popular among the reindeer population or humans. Both parties regard him as an alien and a monster. What's this? You just became like this after eating the renren fruit. There's nothing strange about it. And I also ate a devil fruit, and it happens to be of the same category as you, also a renren fruit. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. After hearing this, Chopper immediately became excited. Did he eat the same type of fruit as him? In an instant, Chopper's favorability towards Sha Chen increased a lot. But he turned around and asked doubtfully, That's not right, you are already a human being, how can you still eat the fruit of everyone? Of course, because the name of the fruit I ate is renren fruit, Monkey King form, which is different from yours, and, my fruit is a phantom beast, it can transform into different forms. Oh, Chopper nodded as if he understood, then suddenly thought of something, and asked expectantly, Then is my fruit a phantom beast species? Although Chopper doesn't know what the phantom beast is, the name sounds very advanced, so it must be a good thing. And he really doesn't know much about his own fruit. He only heard from others that he is the fruit of everyone, but he doesn't know the specific details. The form Sha Chen introduced just now sounds very awesome. If he is also a fantasy beast. Chopper couldn't help but think of the shape of his fruit in his mind. Yes, you are also a phantom beast species. The full name of your fruit is animal type phantom beast species everyone fruit common people form. Sha Chen said seriously, but it could be seen from the slightly twitching corners of his mouth that it's very hard to hold it in now. Common people's form. What is that? Chopper asked with a puzzled look on his face. There is no concept of common people in the world of One Piece, so Chopper naturally doesn't know what it is. Let me tell you, this form is incredible. I can't go into details because it contains great terror. You just need to know that it is much more powerful than my Monkey King form. Wow, is my fruit so powerful? Yes, yes, PFF'd. Sha Chen nodded and said, but, couldn't help it anymore and couldn't help laughing. And this smile was like turning on some switch and couldn't stop. Ha ha ha, ha, why are you laughing? Chaoba was confused by Sha Chen's sudden laughter. I remembered happy things. Sha Chen tried his best to pull the corner of his mouth and said seriously. What happy thing? My wife, oh, no, my relative's wife gave birth to a baby. Oh, that's indeed a happy thing. Chopper said with a nod. Yes, that's right, ha ha ha. After a long period of time, Sha Chen slowly calmed down his mood. The muscles on his face had been fully exercised just now, but I still get a little twitchy from time to time. For some reason, Sha Chen couldn't help but look at Chopper's longing expression. In this case, let Chopper continue to believe his white lie. Even if Chopper knew about this white lie, he wouldn't say anything, right? After this episode, the distance between Sha Chen and Chuba became much closer. Kuleha on the side looked at how happy Chopper and Sha Chen were getting along, and couldn't help but smile. I haven't seen Chopper so happy for a long time. Then she turned to look at Sha Chen and couldn't help but think. This kid, Chopper, how about you be our partner? Kuleha cursed in her heart, but said nothing on the surface. She knew better than anyone else Chopper's desire for companionship. He had always been too lonely. So if Sha Chen wants to kidnap Chopper back, she won't stop him, but she won't help either. Are you kidding me? She also likes Chopper, the arrogant little tanuki, okay. Not stopping her was already her biggest concession. If Sha Chen couldn't let Chaoba go with him, then I'm sorry, the fate has not come yet. Being your partner. Chopper was stunned for a moment, then pointed at himself. Are you talking about me? Otherwise, apart from you, is there anyone named Chaoba here? Sha Chen smiled lightly. No, no. Chopper shook his head crazily, and then repeated the shortcomings he just thought. Sha Chen held his forehead a little helplessly. At this time, Chopper still felt too inferior. Sha Chen added, you don't have to decide so quickly. I will stay here for a few more days, and my companions are also on this island now. Wait until you meet them and feel the atmosphere on our ship. It's not too late to decide. Sha Chen didn't want to force Chopper to join now. His long-standing concept was not so easy to change. It had to be simmered slowly. Your companion, is there anyone else on your ship? Of course, otherwise, wouldn't it be too boring to have a pirate group with only 2 people? That's true. Chopper nodded subconsciously, and then suddenly seemed to realize something, and asked eagerly, are you a pirate? Yes. Is there any problem? Chopper did not answer Sha Chen's words, but stayed in place, recalling his adoptive father Cerulean in his mind. Since Cerulean has always regarded himself as a pirate, and Chopper has never come into contact with other vicious pirates, he has always had a very good impression of pirates. Now that he heard Sha Chen say that he was a pirate, his desire to join them became even stronger, but he still had some scruples. Sha Chen saw the confusion on Chopper's face and said to him, how about I take you to the foot of the mountain to meet my companions? Ah, can I? Chopper's tone was mixed with excitement and anxiety. Of course, don't talk so much, let's go. After saying that, Sha Chen pulled Chopper out, then seemed to think of something, turned to look at Kuleha and said, sister, my companion will trouble you first. You take care of it, I'll take Chopper to play. Go, go, save me the trouble of watching here. Kuleha waved her hands pretending to be impatient. Thank you, sister, we will be back in the evening. After that, Sha Chen and Chaoba walked out side by side. Arriving outside the castle, Chopper turned to Sha Chen and said, when I change my appearance, I will take you down. As soon as he finished speaking, Chopper turned into a normal reindeer. See Gui, Chopper, you are so awesome. Sha Chen praised Chopper very insightfully. Instantly, Chopper's face was stained with a layer of crimson. Even if you say that, I won't be happy. Okay, let's go to the cable car, I'll use that to take you down. Can I ride on you directly? Sha Chen asked. It's okay, but I'm afraid of throwing you out. This is a small problem, I can't do it. Come on, let's go on like this. After saying that, Sha Chen jumped onto Chopper's back with a slight leap, and shouted happily, "Lord Chopper, let's go." "Yo!" Chopper shouted happily, and then he took Sha Chen and jumped directly to the rope going down the mountain. Feeling the whistling wind in his ears and looking at the snowy scene below, Sha Chen felt very comfortable. "By the way, Sha Chen, how did you get up to such a high mountain?" Chopper asked suddenly. "Me, I flew up here." "Oh, it flew up." "Flying up." Chopper suddenly jumped up on the spot and asked in horror. "Yeah, what's the problem?" "It's a big problem. Okay, why can you, a human, fly?" "Even my reindeer can't fly." "Sha Chen, should your reindeer be able to fly?" "No matter how you look at it, it is more unrealistic than human flying, right?" Then Chaoba looked at Sha Chen with starry eyes. "Can you also take me to fly?" "Sure." After saying that, Sha Chen jumped up, and then used moonwalk to step in the air. "Let's go, I'll take you down," Sha Chen said with a smile. Chaoba immediately changed into his original appearance and jumped onto Sha Chen's head. "Hey, I didn't say you could ride me. What's the matter, let's go." After some time, Sha Chen and Chopper walked slowly in the village, but Chopper was in the shape of a reindeer at this time, otherwise he was afraid that he would be regarded as an alien if he walked in human form. But even so, there were still many eyes focused on them, and Chopper seemed a little anxious and uneasy. Sha Chen patted his back gently and said, "When living in this world, don't care too much about other people's opinions. We just have to be ourselves." Chopper nodded, did not answer, and then continued walking towards a certain place. A few minutes later, they came to a house, and Sha Chen knocked on the door gently. From his perception, Luffy and the others were inside. After a while, the door was opened, and what came into view was a very strong man wearing green clothes. Seeing Sha Chen, he was a little confused and couldn't help but ask, "Who are you?" "I am a companion of the group of people behind you. My name is Sha Chen." Sha Chen pointed to Luffy and others behind him. Luffy also saw him at this time and said hello happily. "Hey, Sha Chen." Seeing this scene, the man said, "Then come in first, you are wearing so little, it's too cold outside." After entering the house, Sha Chen found that there was one person missing on their boat, and couldn't help but curiously asked, "Where is Zoro?" "He's guarding the ship," Sanji replied. "How is Miss Nami?" "I have sent her for treatment. She is sleeping now. Nothing will happen to her." "That's good." Everyone couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief after hearing this. Suddenly, Sanji saw Chopper following Sha Chen. His eyes lit up and he looked at Sha Chen and said, "Sha Chen, you actually knew that we were hungry, and you brought a reindeer back specially. Wait, I'm going to take care of it now, and I'll make sure you can eat delicious venison later." After saying that, Sanji stood up and walked towards Chopper. Cold sweat suddenly broke out on Chopper's face. Looking at Sanji walking towards him was like looking at an arrogant big devil. Then he shrank behind Sha Chen in a few tenths of a second, his body trembling uncontrollably. "Sanji, stop making trouble, Chopper is not food." "No, that's right, I'm not food." Chopper said this angrily, and at the same time, his body changed from a reindeer to a human. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. This series of operations by Chopper confused everyone around him. "Reindeer can talk." Luffy opened his mouth wide. "Can you still transform?" Usopp also widened his eyes. After that, the air was quiet for a few seconds, and then a loud shout suddenly erupted. "Monster!" After hearing this, Chopper couldn't help feeling disappointed. It seemed that he still couldn't integrate into human society, and there were too few people who were not prejudiced against him. Alas, it seems that he still can't be companions with other people after all, so he should just stay on Drum Island. At this moment, Chopper's desire to go to sea dropped to freezing point. But the next second, the words spoken by Luffy and Usopp made his eyes shine with dazzling light again. "It's so fun, reindeer, will you be our partner?" Luffy said happily. Usopp said, "It's really interesting, and it's furry and cute." At this moment, looking at the smiles on the faces of the people around him, Chopper's mood was more complicated than ever. He found that these people did not have expressions of disgust and fear on their faces like those who had called him a monster before, but were excited and curious, and they were not afraid of him. Unknowingly, an inexplicable feeling arose in his heart. It was an indescribable feeling. He still couldn't understand it now, but he knew that he was very happy now, very happy. Half an hour later, a group of people gathered in front of the stove, eating the meat of the Goldfish King that Sha Chen took out from the system space. Chopper was licking the marshmallow reservedly and did not eat the meat. After all, he is also a vegetarian, so eating meat seems like it might not be a good idea, right? When Sha Chen saw Chopper licking the marshmallow obediently, he couldn't help but think of the scene in the original book where Chopper learned a lot of advantages from Luffy and the others after boarding the ship. Eat meat, drink alcohol, be passionate about everything. Grandmaster is mainly about a person with strong learning ability, but it seems that all the bad ones have been learned, and the good ones have not been learned. Sha Chen, the taste of the Goldfish King's meat is just different. It's so delicious. Fortunately, you saved some of it. Luffy sighed while eating. Everyone around him nodded in unison when he heard this. Even Dalton, the owner of this house, was impressed by the smell of this Goldfish King. Dalton looked at Sha Chen curiously and said, "What kind of goldfish is this King Goldfish? Why haven't I heard of it? Oh, this is the first time I've seen a super large Poseidon." Sha Chen said lightly, but what he said made Dalton confused. Super large Poseidon type. How did you get that meat? He wiped the sweat from his forehead and asked carefully. How else can we get this? Just kill it and cut the meat off. Sha Chen didn't answer. Instead, Luffy looked at him and said as if he was a fool. Dalton was sweating more at this time. It was obviously an extremely cold winter island. Normally, he would still feel a bit cool even if there was a stove, but why did he feel that his sweat glands were a bit developed today? By the way, in order to thank you for trusting my partners and helping them get to the island, I will leave some of the Goldfish King's meat for you. Sha Chen looked at Dalton and said. Okay, thank you. Dalton replied subconsciously. Then he suddenly turned around and looked at Sha Chen doubtfully. How do you know I helped them get to the island? Guessed it. Because I know that the residents of your island hate pirates. After all, this country was just destroyed by pirates. Dalton was instantly excited when he heard this, stood up and stared at Sha Chen. How did you know this? Are you with the pirate from before? No, I just happen to know. After all, the pirate who destroyed your country is somewhat famous now. Blackbeard, Marshal D. Teach, one of the future 4 emperors. Sha Chen said the following words in his heart. Yes, that's right, that's his name. Dalton sat down again and said slowly. Although I hate him very much, from another perspective, the destruction of the country may not be a bad thing. Why, isn't it a bad thing if her country is destroyed? Vivi, who had been silent until she heard Dalton's words, stood up and shouted excitedly. For a moment, everyone looked at her and looked at each other. I'm sorry, I'm a little excited, please keep talking. Vivi sat down a little embarrassed. Dalton was a little confused at this time. He was really startled by Vivi. After adjusting his mood, he continued, because the country was destroyed, we got rid of the tyranny of our king. Our place used to be called the Drum Kingdom. The king was a man named Valpo. He was tyrannical and cruel. He was even the first to flee for his life when the pirates came, leaving his people behind. How can a king do this? Shouldn't a king protect his own people? He is not a king at all. Vivi stood up again and shouted excitedly. Dalton. Why do I feel that you are more excited than me? Dalton was a little confused, but Luffy and others knew very clearly why Vivi was like this. At this time, a palm patted Vivi's shoulder, and then said to her. Don't be excited, Vivi. Not every king is like what you said. A large number of kings are like Valpo and don't care about their country or their people at all. So those kings who love and protect their people like you said will be fine, because no one is more suitable to be the king of a country than such people. Sha Chen. Vivi looked at Sha Chen blankly and murmured softly. Sha Chen gave Vivi a reassuring look. Just when he was about to say something, there was a noise outside. Dalton immediately stood up and said to everyone, you guys stay here for a while, I'll go see what happened outside. After saying that, he opened the door and walked out. Let's go see what's going on. Maybe we can join in the fun. Sha Chen also said to everyone. Everyone slowly came outside and saw Dalton staring blankly ahead, with a flash of fear in his eyes, and then said with an ugly face. Valpo. Chapter 71. Following Dalton's gaze, he saw a fat and ugly figure in the distance. A man with dark purple hair, a huge mouth and a cylindrical tin plate attached to his chin appeared in front of everyone. At this time, he was opening his huge mouth to bite the surrounding houses, swallowing all the debris of the houses into his stomach. After eating one round, he couldn't help but burp. The baked house is still delicious. Then he stood on a hippopotamus and shouted loudly, "Everything in this country belongs to me. I can do whatever I want. You all must submit to my rule, ha 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 ha." After hearing all this, Dalton couldn't bear it anymore and immediately ran towards Valpo, transforming into a bison in the middle. Huh, is Dalton also a devil fruit user? Sanji couldn't help but ask curiously. After a while, Dalton came to Valpo and shouted, "Valpo." Huh, who's calling me? Valpo turned his head curiously, and what he saw was a strange blade. Tear. The sound of tearing flesh and blood mixed with Valpo's painful shouts came, causing all Valpo's subordinates around him to turn pale with fright. They couldn't help shouting in horror, "Lord Valpo." One of the men with an afro looked at Dalton angrily and said, "Dalton, what are you doing? How dare you hurt Lord Valpo? I'm protecting this country," Dalton said with firm eyes. Jess, who had wavy lips on the other side, also looked at Dalton angrily, and then shouted to the side, "Dr. 20. As the sound of "Operation Begins" came, a large group of people wearing doctors' uniforms came out. They worked together and treated Valpo's injuries in a short time. In an instant, Valpo sat up straight as if he had learned Luffy's sit-ups. "Ah, I thought I was going to die." After reacting, Valpo looked at Dalton angrily and said, "Dalton, how dare you do this to me? Have you forgotten that you are my subordinate?" "Not so long ago," Dalton replied calmly. "Not from the moment you abandoned the kingdom because you were afraid of pirates." "What happened to abandoning the kingdom? Are your lives as important as mine? You should be proud of using your lives in exchange for my chance to escape." Dalton was instantly furious when he heard this. "Valpo, is this something you can say as a king? Since you are the son of the previous king who was kind to me, I always thought you would wake up, but now it seems this is no longer possible." Dalton held his weapon in front of him, looked at Valpo and said word by word, "I will drive you out of this country." "Hey, who can't tell lies? Dalton, do you think you can deal with so many of us by yourself?" Valpo sneered disdainfully. "If he alone is not enough, what about us?" At some point, Luffy and Sanji had already stood beside Dalton, looking at Valpo and said calmly. "Huh." Valpo narrowed his eyes, a dangerous look flashed in his eyes, and asked unkindly, "Boy, who are you?" Since Sha Chen directly used somersault clouds to fly Luffy and the others to Drum Island this time, he didn't meet Valpo and the others on the way, and naturally they didn't know Luffy either. "Ugly monster, my name is Luffy, and I am the one who wants to beat you up. What you said made me very unhappy. A king should never be like you. Boy, are you looking for death? Do you dare to call me ugly? Also, why should I be the king without you judging me? Since you dare to provoke me, the three of you will die here together today." Dalton looked at Luffy and Sanji beside him with complicated eyes, and couldn't help but said, "You don't actually need to stand up. Now you are also targeted by Valpo, he will not let it go. Mr. Dalton, you were willing to believe us against all odds before. We are very grateful to you. Now that you have encountered a problem, we cannot turn a blind eye. And, just because of this ugly monster, I can beat him to pieces with just a move of my hands and feet without even using my hands," Sanji said calmly after taking a puff of cigarette. However, when he said this, Sha Chen and others behind him looked strange. "You seem to always only fight with your feet, right?" But Valpo didn't know this. When he heard what Sanji said, his anger suddenly surged, and he said to the men behind him, "Go and kill them all. I want these boys to know the consequences of provoking me." Quote. "Yes." A group of soldiers holding guns responded, and then all walked out, facing Luffy and the others without hesitation and pulling the triggers. "Look out!" Dalton yelled. The body moved quickly, trying to get in front of Luffy and the others to block these bullets. But Luffy's figure was faster than him. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the path of these bullets and blocked them all with his body. Straw Hat. Dalton was shocked. He didn't understand why the Straw Hat boy used his body to block these bullets. He could obviously. Before his thoughts stopped, he saw a bunch of bullets bounce out of Luffy's body and shoot back in the original direction. At this time, Sha Chen was a little surprised when he looked at Luffy, but he was not surprised by the same thing as Dalton. But Luffy's speed just now was almost catching up with Shave. Interesting. It seems that the training during this period is still very effective. Sha Chen waved his hand, and a table and several stools appeared in front of him. Then he sat down on his own, picked up the teapot on the table, and brewed the Earl Grey tea that he had received from Mr. 3 before. He also greeted Vivi and the others. Come on, let's drink together. Usopp couldn't help but sigh after sitting down and taking a sip of tea. Drinking tea in winter is so comfortable. But is it really okay for us to watch Luffy and the others fight here? What's the matter? It's easy for Luffy and the others to deal with this rabble. We can just watch from the sidelines. At this moment, a figure rushed out from beside Sha Chen. It was Chowba. Chopper swallowed a small yellow ball on the way, and then transformed into a strong man-like figure and stood beside Luffy and the others. I'm here to help too. See Gui, Chopper, you can actually change into this form. Luffy turned towards Chopper with excitement on his face. After I eat my homemade blue wave ball, I can transform into 7 forms. Chopper said calmly, with a proud expression on his face. 7 kinds. Luffy became even more excited and kept praising Chopper for his greatness. Even if you say that, I won't be happy. Chopper twisted his body again. However, because Chopper is now in a weight-strengthened form, his twisted posture and the seemingly shy but actually ferocious expression on his face make it look a bit eye-catching. Die, boys. Just when Luffy was about to say something, Valpo shouted and rushed towards them, his mouth instantly opened wide enough to swallow several people. I lost it. Several people were immediately frightened and hurriedly moved to the side. They dodged past, but the house behind them suffered damage. Half of the entire house was swallowed by Valpo in one bite. Valpo said while chewing, "It's not roasted, it tastes a bit worse." What kind of monster are you? Sanji was so surprised that he could no longer hold the cigarette in his mouth. I am a Tuntun person who has eaten Tuntun fruit. I can eat anything, so you just wait and become my food. PFF'd. Before Valpo finished speaking, Luffy appeared in front of him and punched him hard. Blood sprayed in the air. After Luffy beat Valpo away, he still kept pumping his fist, then stood up slowly and pressed the brim of his hat. That kind of thing is impossible to happen, because I will beat you away before that happens. You dare to hurt Lord Valpo again, it's unforgivable. Chromamon and Jace jumped out together, and then attacked Luffy from the left to the right. Bang, bang. As 2 sounds came, they flew backwards at a faster speed than when they attacked. Chopper and Dalton stood on either side of Luffy, maintaining the posture of attacking just now. Hey, you guys are a bit immoral, Sanji said dissatisfied. The red and blue buffs have been robbed by you, so I can only brush the 3 pigs. Forget it, just be a miscellaneous soldier, at least I can be useful. With this idea in mind, Sanji rushed into those henchmen who didn't even have names, kicking each one with great pleasure. Then Luffy went to Valpo, Chopper and Dalton went to Chromamon and Jace respectively. The main thing was a reasonable distribution. Sha Chen and the others were still drinking tea leisurely on the other side, commenting on their battles from time to time. Luffy's progress is amazing. Sha Chen couldn't help but sigh. When Luffy was fighting Valpo now, not only did he show near-shaping speed just now, but it was also obvious under Sha Chen's piercing eyes that his strength had also been significantly improved. Should I say he deserves to be the protagonist? The speed of getting stronger is only a few 100 million points worse than him. However, Sha Chen thinks that the main thing is that he teaches well. Although his teaching level is far inferior to Teacher Kai, he feels that he is still much better than a mediocre teacher. After all, he is a good teacher. Valpo's strength is not strong in the first place. Even if he meets Luffy in the original work, he is far from a match, let alone the current Luffy. Not long after, he was hit by a rocket launcher from Luffy and enjoyed the same package as Big Wolf. Sanji's strength has also improved a lot, and he is still facing a group of miscellaneous fish, which is easier. However, because there were more trash fish, Sanji took a little longer than Luffy. After they finished the fight, they did not go to help Chopper and Dalton. Instead, they walked directly to Sha Chen and said with Sha Chen, "Sha Chen, change 2 more stools." Sha Chen, With a wave of his hand, 2 stools appeared out of thin air next to him, and at the same time there were 2 more cups on the table. Sha Chen said to them, "If you want to drink tea, pour it yourself." Ha! After taking a sip of tea, Sanji showed an expression of enjoyment on his face, and then watched Chopper and the others fighting. Seeing Chopper defeating Chromamon, Sanji couldn't help but said in surprise, "I thought he was just a pet, but I didn't expect him to be so powerful." Ha ha ha, he is very interesting, isn't he? So I want him to be our partner, Luffy said excitedly from the side. Sha Chen also said calmly, "Yes, he must become our partner, even if he is abducted, we must abduct him. After all, he is not only an arrogant little raccoon cat, but also a very good doctor. The position of our ship's doctor belongs to him." "Ah, he's a doctor," Sanji said in disbelief. Is this his first time seeing an animal doctor? After calming down for a while, Sanji couldn't help but curiously asked, "Humans who help animals see doctors are called veterinarians, but what do animals call people who treat humans?" "Human doctors." Sanji's words immediately silenced Sha Chen and all of them. And Sha Chen really pondered and started thinking. Don't tell me, that's a good question. Before Sha Chen could figure out the answer to this question, the battle between Chopper and Dalton had come to an end. After the 2 of them shouted out the names of their moves, their bodies moved instantly and passed by their opponents. After that, Chromamon and Jace fell to the ground together. At this point, the Valpo Legion was completely destroyed. "Hey, come over for tea," Sha Chen waved to them and shouted. After some time, the people sitting on the snowmobile looked at the green algae-headed man with a naked upper body, a red nose, and a trembling body. They all tilted their heads to reveal question marks. "Zoro, what are you doing here?" "Exercise." Sha Chen's mouth twitched. "Ah, right, that's right, I'm just here to exercise. It's not cold enough on the boat, so it won't have any training effect on me." Zoro explained seriously. He would never say that he wanted to swim. And then got lost. "Absolutely not." "Oh, so it's for exercise," Sha Chen said in a long tone. Then he said with a teasing tone, "Then you can continue to exercise here. We are going up the mountain. Goodbye." After that, Sha Chen said to Chopper, "Choppa, let's go." "Wait a minute," Zoro yelled. "Actually, I've already exercised almost enough. It's not enough to go too far, so I'll go up the mountain with you. Mainly because I want to see how Nami is doing." "Okay." Sha Chen smiled lightly and did not continue to tease Zoro. "Then come up." Zoro jumped onto the snowmobile with a single jump. At this time, a cold wind blew. It directly made him shrink into a ball. "By the way, do you have any clothes for me to put on first?" "Oh, this castle is so spectacular," Luffy said with eyes shining as he looked at the snow castle in front of him. This turned out to be Valpo's castle. With his tyrannical character, he must ensure that he is satisfied with the place where he lives. Sha Chen replied lightly, and then continued. "Let's go and see how Nami is recovering." After some time, a group of people walked into the room where Nami was resting. Then, they all escaped in less than 10 seconds. At the same time, countless weapons behind them flew towards them. Knives, swords, sticks, everything. Kuleha had dozens of weapons hanging on her body and shouted angrily, "This is not a vegetable market, you fools. Where did this weird mother-in-law come from?" Luffy was shocked. "And this weird mother-in-law is so fierce." This is what Zoro said. The moment he heard these 2 sentences, a bad thought flashed through Sha Chen's heart. He hurriedly moved away from Luffy, Zoro and the others. Sure enough, Kuleha appeared in front of them at a speed comparable to Kizaru, and then used the Bamato, which came from the same school as Nami, to punch Luffy and Zoro hard. Then he clapped his hands calmly. "If you don't know how to speak, don't speak. I am a young and beautiful person who is only over 130 years old." After saying that, Kuleha turned back to the room and closed the door heavily. Sha Chen said to Luffy angrily, "Tell me, why did you yell as soon as you entered? We were all kicked out." Sha Chen felt a little angry when he thought of this. It was all Luffy's fault. Otherwise, as Kuleha's good brother, he would have done nothing wrong. Setting fire to this would have affected him as a fish. "How do I know?" Luffy said aggrievedly with a swollen face. "This strange woman, who is this young and beautiful lady?" Sanji hurriedly changed his words mid-sentence. Although Kuleha had already entered the room, he couldn't guarantee whether she would hear her. If she did, wouldn't he have to enjoy the treatment of these two idiots? She is the one who healed Nami. She is one of the only 2 doctors on the island besides Dr. 20, and she is also the one who taught Chopper his medical skills. Oh, so she is the strange doctor, Mr. Dalton said. She is indeed. Before Luffy could finish speaking, Zoro came over and hurriedly covered his mouth. You still want her to come out and beat you again, right? When Luffy heard Zoro's words, he realized with hindsight that he had almost said those words again. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and then he glanced at Zoro gratefully. Fortunately, Zoro is here. Mother Gerva is actually quite good-tempered, but she just won't let others call her old. Chopper said from the side. Oh, no wonder. Zoro touched his chin. Okay, everyone comes in with me, and then you can say whatever I say, understand? Sha Chen looked at them and asked. Understood. Everyone nodded in unison. Hello sister. A bunch of people said in unison. I told you not to be so loud, can't you hear me? Kuleha shouted, but this time she did not drive everyone out. Seeing this scene, Luffy and others looked at Sha Chen with admiration. Or will you say it? Sister, is Nami okay now? Basically, sister, is Nami okay now? Before Kurha could finish speaking, Luffy interrupted her and asked again. You don't need to learn this. Sha Chen said while holding back his anger. Didn't you see that no one else has learned? Are you the only one who has no vision? No need to learn this. Luffy's voice sounded again. Sister, let me take care of things first. Sha Chen walked towards Luffy with a smile. Sister, let me first. Before Luffy could finish his words, he was kicked out by Sha Chen, and then bang 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 bang. Ha! Sha Chen clapped his hands and felt much better. Obviously you told us to learn how to speak like you, why are you hitting me now? Luffy said angrily. If I'm to blame, it's because you have no vision. If I don't hit you, who will I hit? Sha Chen said lightly. I can't help it. Who said I'm stronger than you? Luffy, when you are not as strong as me, lower your head and be a human being. After saying this, Sha Chen whistled happily and walked inside. Luffy looked at Sha Chen's back bitterly. When he becomes stronger than Sha Chen, he will be so arrogant. After some time, Luffy, give me a shot. Sha Chen shouted, then threw the snowball in his hand towards Luffy. At this time, Luffy had just dodged the snowballs thrown by Chopper and Usopp, and was accidentally hit in the face. The whole head is covered with snow. Ha ha ha, Luffy, you look so funny. Usopp laughed hard, holding his stomach. It's really interesting. Chopper also laughed. Whoosh. Bang. Before the two of them stopped laughing, 2 snowballs hit their faces respectively. Sha Chen, why did you hit us? Aren't we on the same side? Usopp shouted. Yes, aren't we in the same group? TCH, you have to divide into camps for a snowball fight, right? Everyone you see is an enemy. Sha Chen said lightly, with an aura of pretentiousness permeating the scene. Luffy, Chopper, I have an idea. Usopp said with a slightly calm face. Since someone is so arrogant, I think we need to target him together. Yeah, I think so too. I need to show some color to some people. Go ahead, defeat Sha Chen. Chopper shouted, waving his arms. Then the 3 of them stood in a row, with determined expressions on their faces. It was as if Sha Chen was some kind of villain. Sha Chen, I know you are very strong, so don't blame us for 3 against 1. After all, this is recognition of your strength. Oh, is that so? A faint smile appeared on Sha Chen's lips. Now that you have said so. Sha Chen's eyes narrowed and he softly uttered 2 words. Clone. In an instant, 15 clones appeared around Sha Chen. Then Sha Chen said calmly, I know you are very strong, so don't blame me for 5 against 1. After all, this is recognition of your strength. Luffy and the other 3's eyes all popped out, and then they swallowed in a similar manner. Then he said tremblingly, Sha Chen, you are cheating. This is what you do first. Okay, no more nonsense. Just prepare to be beaten. Superior. As Sha Chen finished speaking, 15 Sha Chen clones picked up snowballs from the ground and hit Luffy and the other 3 people on the opposite side. Don't say it, it's true that there is strength in numbers. Even if it is throwing snowballs, the snowballs thrown by 15 people are extremely powerful. In particular, Sha Chen was very fast at pinching and throwing snowballs, and even formed an assembly line with several people pinching and throwing snowballs. Snowballs flew out like machine guns. Hurry! Run away! Usopp shouted loudly. Then the three of them ran back quickly like something. Above the castle, Kuleha and Nami were standing here looking at the four people playing below. Chopper is very happy, Nami said suddenly. Yes, Chopper is very happy. I haven't seen him like this for many years. After finishing speaking, Kuleha was silent for a long time. He seems to be thinking about something. After some time, he quietly said, "Take Chopper away." Nami turned to look at Kuleha and said after a long silence, "Okay." Evening. In a room in the castle. Mother Gulewa, I want to be Sha Chen's partner and go to sea with them. Oh, I got it. Kuleha said lightly. This flat tone made Chopper confused, and he couldn't help but tilt his head in confusion. Dr. Gulewa, you agree? Of course. Why don't you agree? It's just. Kuleha slowly stood up. It's just that you, as my assistant, dare to abandon me like this. I will kill you and give them a dead reindeer. Kuleha took out various weapons from behind and put them on her body. Her whole body seemed to exude an extremely evil aura, at least in Chopper's view. Hey, Chopper, just let me kill you. No. Chopper quickly transformed into a form with enhanced leg strength and ran outside while shouting. Ah! A horrified voice came from inside the castle, causing everyone who was preparing outside to look over. As the sound got closer and closer, a few seconds later, a reindeer appeared in front of them with a wonderful drift, and then ran towards them with a frightened expression. While running, he said, Mother Gulewa is going to kill the deer. Ha! Just when everyone was wondering, fully armed Kuleha appeared in front of them. The psychological shadow of Luffy and Zoro instantly changed their expressions as if they had eaten shit. Looking at this scene, Sha Chen laughed loudly and said, Everyone, get ready to run away. Run! Luffy was the first to yell and ran towards the sleigh. Immediately afterwards, the rest of the people also ran there one by one. Everyone arrived at the same time as Chopper, who picked up the rope, put it on himself, and ran down the rope. The sleigh passed by under the moonlight, like a strange story from a legend. Kurha stood by the cliff and watched quietly as Chopper drove Luffy and the others away. At some point, Dalton appeared beside her. Do we have to say goodbye this way? Idiot, do I have to cry? After all, I am over 130 years old, right? Although Kuleha said this, her eyes were already filled with tears, which looked particularly shining in the moonlight. Chopper, you must be happy. Due to Chopper's presence, it didn't take long for everyone to arrive at the coast where the Melly docked. Vivi, is it running fast? Sha Chen pointed at a frozen duck in the sea and asked Vivi on the side. What did you say? Vivi turned back, with a flush on her face after experiencing an exciting adventure. Sha Chen said what he just said again. Run fast. This stupid duck, didn't he slip and fall? Zoro said with a mocking smile as he looked at the fast-running man. After hearing this, Sha Chen gave Zoro a strange look. If he remembered correctly. Yeah. Chopper nodded next to Kuaisho. Then he said. It said that he thought a man named Zoro had fallen into the sea and drowned, so he went to save him. Before he finished speaking, a black shadow teleported behind Zoro, and Conqueror's domineering energy wrapped around his raised fist. It turns out it was you fool. After Nami beat Zoro, he walked up to Chopper and asked him in surprise, I didn't expect you could understand animals, Chopper. I am an animal, so it is normal for me to understand animals. See Gui, even if you say that, I won't be happy. You are obviously very happy. Luffy and Usopp stood aside and said contemptuously. Bang! At this moment, the sound of a cannon was fired, followed by the sound of cannons one after another. Everyone couldn't help but look in the direction of the sound. I saw explosions happening one after another in midair on the highest mountain on Sugu Island. After the explosion, a shocking scene appeared. The white snow on the entire island slowly turned pink, shining brightly under the moonlight. Ouch! Chopper stared blankly at the previous scene. He whispered softly, Is this Sakura? Mother Gulewa, thank you. Chopper, Chopper, don't be in a daze, come over and play quickly. Sha Chen hugged Chopper, who was in a daze, and said. Then he pointed his finger towards Luffy. Look, Luffy's chopsticks stuck in his nostrils are very interesting, do you want to try it too? Sha Chen put 2 chopsticks in the palm of his hand and handed them to Chowba. How could I? Oh, Chopper, the length of the chopsticks you chose is not as long as mine. You are not good at it. Ha ha ha. Luffy looked at Chopper, who inserted the chopsticks into his nostrils, and laughed. TCH, it's just my first time and I'm not used to it yet. When I get used to it, I can use it longer than you. Chopper said, unconvinced. Idiot, how is that possible? I'm a rubber man. Even if you practice for 10,000 years, you won't be able to match me, ha ha ha. Sha Chen sat on the railing and watched the scene quietly, enjoying the atmosphere on the boat. It's great. Days like this. Why don't you go over and insert your nostrils with them? Nami sat next to Sha Chen and asked him. Forget it, that thing is not suitable for me. How can I do that kind of thing with such a handsome face? You are quite narcissistic. Of course, at least until now I have never met anyone more handsome than me. Sha Chen said with pride on his face. That's true. Nami nodded and did not refute this because she had never seen it before. After a moment of silence, Nami suddenly said, Sha Chen, thank you. Huh, what are you thanking me for? Sha Chen turned his head and looked at her doubtfully. Thank you for what you did for me during my illness. I really. Nami covered her forehead and looked at Sha Chen in pain. Why did you play me? Then don't you look at what you are talking about. Do we need to say thank you to each other? Aren't we partners? Partner, just a partner. Nami murmured softly. Huh, what did you say? Nothing. Yes, we are partners. I'm going to have supper with Vivi. Are you coming? Eating late night snacks is the easiest way to gain weight, which is bad for your health. Sha Chen said seriously. Then, add me one. On the sunny sea, the Melly was sailing slowly. Sha Chen, there is no food in the warehouse again, go and replenish it. Sanji walked to the bow and shouted to Sha Chen, who was lying on the rocking chair and taking a nap. After hearing this, Sha Chen slowly opened his eyes, a trace of helplessness flashed in his eyes. It's only been a few days. The food is gone again. I can't help it, Luffy is such a glutton. At least half of the food went into his stomach. After hearing this, Sha Chen couldn't help but hold his forehead slightly, then stood up and walked slowly towards the warehouse. Sha Chen felt very ashamed now that he thought that he had ever thought that he could eat better than Luffy. He overestimated himself and underestimated Luffy. When it comes to eating, he is indeed no match. Sha Chen came to the warehouse, waved his hand, and a large pile of food appeared in front of him. Fortunately, he had killed so many dinosaurs and the Goldfish King when he was in the small garden before, so he had a lot of meat in reserve. Otherwise, we really may not be able to support this consumption. As soon as Sha Chen walked out of the warehouse, Luffy's head turned over and looked at the dinosaur meat and goldfish meat in the warehouse, showing a look of disgust. Why is it this meat again? Isn't there anything else? I'm tired of eating this every day. Then you still eat the most every day. Sha Chen punched Luffy directly in the face, but he didn't hit anything. Sha Chen had a look of surprise on his face and turned to look at Luffy standing aside. I didn't expect, Luffy, you actually mastered shaving. After hearing this, Luffy pointed at Sha Chen with his hands on his hips and laughed. Ha ha ha, of course, idiot Sha Chen, do you think I'm just playing around these days? I've been practicing very hard, okay. Now I've mastered shaving, and you won't be able to beat me in the future. At this point, Luffy's face became even more proud. He even looked at Sha Chen with provocative eyes. Seeing Luffy like this, Sha Chen had a slight smile on his face. Luffy, have I ever told you that you have to be low-key as a person? Sha Chen was still in the same place when he said the previous words, but when he said the last 3 words, he had already appeared next to Luffy. When Luffy looked shocked and hurriedly tried to escape with his shaver. But unfortunately, it's too late. Sha Chen raised his fist, wrapped his arms around it, punched Luffy, and then used his feet to drag Luffy's falling body. After all, it's okay if Luffy is injured, but the ship can't be damaged. And because Luffy fell too fast, the foot that caught him directly caused secondary damage to Luffy at such a fast speed. After all, Force works reciprocally. He gave Luffy a kick, but his foot was also under pressure, so neither of them owed anything to the other. Of course, it might be more convincing if this ignores the armed color on Sha Chen's feet. Sha Chen looked at Luffy, who was lying on the ground, and rolled his eyes and said, "The weather has cleared up and the rain has stopped. You think you can do it again?" After saying that, he walked towards his throne at the bow of the ship. But next to them, Usopp and Chopper were both stunned. After a while, Usopp said excitedly, "Sha Chen's words are too domineering." "That's right, it's so domineering." Chopper also agreed. Then the two of them imitated the process of Sha Chen beating Luffy on the boat. The most critical ending must be added. The weather has cleared up and the rain has stopped, and you feel like you can do it again. Nami, something strange is happening ahead. Oh, it's okay, it's just ordinary water vapor. Just go there. This is a normal phenomenon caused by submarine volcanoes. Undersea volcanoes. There are also volcanoes under the sea. Chopper asked curiously. Of course there is, and there are more volcanoes under the sea than on land. Oh, so that's what it is. Chopper felt that he had learned new knowledge. At the same time, on the other side of the water vapor. "Have you seen Mr. 3's ship?" "Report Mr. 2, nothing was found." "Where did Mr. 3 die?" "If we can't find him again and kill him, the slave family's life will be in danger." A muscular man wearing a ballet costume and strangely heavy makeup sat on a chair and cursed. "Keep looking for me, don't let go of any sign of a ship." "Yes, help, I'm a landlubber. Help." "Ha." Sha Chen slowly took off the newspaper covering his face, patted his head and stood up. "What happened?" "Oh, there's a person drowning," Luffy said, pointing to a person struggling in the sea. Sha Chen pondered for a while, then glanced at everyone again. "So, none of you went to save him?" Everyone who heard this looked at Sanji, who was smoking nearby. "No, why are you looking at me?" "Thank you for the rescue." The man thanked everyone. Hey, your savior is here, what do you mean by bowing hard to them?" Sanji, who was wringing clothes at the side, said dissatisfiedly. "Thank you very much, my benefactor." The man turned to Sanji and bowed deeply. "Yeah," Sanji replied calmly. If he was usually thanked like this by someone else, even if that person was a man, he wouldn't be so cold. But for some reason, he always felt a little uncomfortable looking at the man in front of him. Sha Chen on the side also looked at the man in front of him with interest. "Oh, no. Senior cadre of Baroque Studio, Mr. Tu Von Clay." But should I say it, Sha Chen still had a pretty good impression of him. Although Xiao Feng said he called himself a slave every day, he also advertised himself. But the man was not ambiguous at all. Whether he turned into Luffy and was captured by Marine in Alabasta, or saved Luffy from danger again in Impel Down City, I don't know how many people were moved to tears at the time. If possible, he wouldn't mind helping him then, but that would be something later. Now they are enemies. Just as Sha Chen's thoughts were swirling, Mr. Tu had already become involved with Luffy and others, and was constantly showing them his face-changing skills. Suddenly, he turned into Nami. Before he was about to pull off his clothes, Sha Chen teleported to him and punched him hard. Hey, this isn't good. Sha Chen pulled him up and stared at him with a friendly, fierce, and kind, ferocious face. Indeed, it's really not good, Mr. Tu said with a little fear after swallowing his saliva. At that moment, he felt a murderous aura. The man in front of you is very dangerous. Sha Chen looked at him indifferently. He didn't know why he did what he did just now. He did it subconsciously, but it didn't matter. He only knew that he would not be happy if Mr. Tu did that. Thinking of this, Sha Chen suddenly had an idea in his mind. Anyway, he is so strong now, and he can solve many things. How about killing this fool? Sha Chen looked at Mr. Tu and said, "Come and touch me and see if you can imitate me." "Of course you can," Mr. Tu said confidently. Since he ate the fruit, he has never met anyone he can't imitate. Mr. Tu lightly touched Sha Chen's arm and was about to activate his ability the next moment. How is it possible? Sweat broke out on Mr. Tu's face. No matter how he gestured with his hands, he could not imitate Sha Chen's look. Is that really the case? Sha Chen murmured in a low voice. At this time, he was not the only one who was as shocked as Mr. Tu. Luffy and others were also very surprised when they saw this situation. Why is his fruit power useless to you? Zoro asked curiously. Baki. I used my Baki to defend against his fruit ability. Sha Chen replied calmly. Just now he just tried to cover his body with domineering energy, and then Mr. Two's ability failed. Sha Chen had this idea because of the various hockey defense fruit abilities he saw when watching anime in his previous life. For example, Virgo's ability to defend Luo with his hockey, and Luo's ability to defend against the disease fruit with his hockey, both illustrate the power of hockey. It seems that Teacher Kai is right, only domineering can overcome everything. See Gui, can you still be so domineering? Luffy was very surprised. Then he continued. It seems that I have to master domineering soon. After hearing this, Sha Chen glanced at him lightly and said nothing. During this period of training, Luffy was just a step away from mastering the weapon color. Maybe he could master it by fighting another experienced monster. It's just that I'm still a little bit far behind when it comes to seeing and hearing, and I can't see any signs of mastering it yet. The others are basically the same. Zoro also masters the weapon color faster, while Usopp and Sanji master the sight color faster. Thinking of this, Sha Chen couldn't help but be a little curious, who among these people can be the first to master domineering? Listening to the people around him discussing what is domineering and not domineering, Mr. Two felt that he had touched a blind spot in his own knowledge. After a while, he raised his hands and asked, what is domineering? Oh, domineering is. Before Luffy could finish his words, Sha Chen punched him. Sha Chen, why did you hit me again this time? Luffy said dissatisfiedly, rubbing his head and holding back tears. Sha Chen didn't look at him, but looked at Mr. Two, and said calmly, we have no intention of sharing the information with the enemy. At this point, Sha Chen also directly showed off his cards and directly pointed out the identity of Mr. Two. What kind of enemy? The slave family doesn't know. Mr. Two hurriedly retorted, he didn't want to be the enemy of the man in front of him. Will you die? Sha Chen did not answer him, but turned to look at Vivi and asked, Vivi, have you seen Mr. Two from Baroque Studio? No. Vivi was stunned for a moment, then replied. But I heard that Mr. Two is a tall, wearing a swan ballet costume, with a mouthful of slaves, and the word, Oben, on the back. Aha! After hearing Vivi's words, everyone's eyes turned to Mr. Two. What followed was silence for more than a minute. After a long time, Nami pointed at Mr. Two and asked, so, does the person you describe look like this? It seems so, Vivi said uncertainly. Remove the image. Everyone except Sanji shouted at Vivi. Usopp turned to look at Mr. Two and said as if he had been betrayed, I thought you were a good friend just now, but I didn't expect you to be an enemy. Tell me, what are you doing on our ship? Mr. Two. It seems like you were the ones who fished me out. Okay, just now you were saving one by one, but now you're getting rid of it, right? You ungrateful villain. Chopper also jumped out and yelled. All I can say is how much fun I had just now, and how harshly I'm being scolded now. After hearing this, Mr. Two once again showed his black question mark. No, this can all be used to condemn me. You are looking at me with sunglasses on, right? It's true that I am Mr. Two of Baroque Studio, but what does this have to do with whether we are enemies or not? The people in Baroque Studio are all our enemies, do you understand? Sanji took a puff of cigarette and said. It seems, there's no need to talk. Mr. Two's face darkened. In that case, the fist, Mr. Two was punched on the head by Sha Chen and fainted as soon as he took a fighting stance. Don't show me this disgusting boxing technique. Sha Chen waved his hand in disgust. Sanji, go get a rope and tie this guy up, otherwise his abilities will be a bit tricky. Although Sha Chen himself doesn't have such concerns, because his sharp eyes can tell whether Luffy and the others have become Mr. Two, but the problem is that Luffy and the others can't tell. Even if it can be distinguished by the way of tying ropes in the original work, the problem is that if Mr. Two is not controlled, it will be difficult to handle if he turns into Cobra again and does certain things. He has always been a person who hates trouble. If there is an easier way to help Vivi regain Alabasta, then he will definitely take an easier way. For example, if all problems could be solved by directly killing Crocodile, then he would go find him now. The problem is that most of the people in Alabasta now admire Crocodile very much. If he is killed before his evil deeds are exposed, Alabasta may fall into a more serious civil war. Therefore, this method will definitely not work. Crocodile must first be shown to the people of Alabasta so that they can recognize his true face. Only in this way can it be easier to regain the country. But, before that, it should be okay for him to go and have a fight with Crocodile. He also wanted to experience the strength of Sand Crocodile and see if he was really killed by Luffy because of the plot. After all, it was clear that he could be defeated by Luffy at that time in Alabasta. After entering Impel Down for a while, he came out and fought against Ming Jie and Hawkeye successively without showing any signs of weakness during the war on top. You must know that even Luffy 2 years later will not be able to defeat Ming Jie if he does not use fourth gear, let alone Hawkeye who can kill Jinbei with a single blow. Therefore, Crocodile's strength is very fascinating. It's impossible to say what kind of treasure Impel Down City is, right? The spiritual time room, the inheritance space of Sage of Six Paths, the kind where one's strength is greatly enhanced after entering it. Stop making trouble. All in all, Crocodile has to go and see for himself to know exactly what his strength is. I hope he won't be disappointed. Boom! With a loud noise, a strange creature burst out of the water. Is this a sea cat? Sanji said uncertainly as he looked at the creature in front of him. This is my first time seeing this kind of creature. I wonder how it tastes as an ingredient. Sea cat. If you want to know how it tastes, just chop it off. Zoro slowly pulled out the knife on his waist. Sea cat. New food. That's great. I vomit after eating dinosaur meat and goldfish meat every day. I've long wanted to change the taste. Luffy said excitedly, and his mouth was dripping all over the floor. Sea cat. Gia Gia Gia. The three of them laughed sinisterly at the same time, preparing to kill the sea cat. What are you doing? Vivi instantly came behind the three of them, and one of them punched them. Then he said angrily. Really, sea cats are regarded as sacred symbols here in Alabasta. What are you guys thinking in your heads? Taking advantage of this gap, the sea cat quickly dived into the water and hurried away from the ship. It's so scary. These people want to eat me. My flesh. Luffy wailed as he looked at the escaping sea cat. Extremely uncomfortable. Bang! There was another bag on Luffy's head, accompanied by Vivi's roar. Didn't I tell you not to eat it? This side of Alabasta, Sanji pondered, grasping the key to Vivi's words. That means we are almost at Alabasta, right, Miss Vivi? Yes. Vivi nodded, and then continued. The appearance of sea cats proves that we have arrived in the sea near Alabasta, and we are very close to Alabasta. At this moment, Chopper on the bow of the boat shouted loudly, Hey, everyone! There is an island over there, is it Alabasta? Huh. After hearing this, Vivi immediately rushed to the bow of the ship, picked up the telescope in Chopper's hand and took a look, with an excited expression on her face. Yes, that is the desert kingdom, Alabasta. Sha Chen, let's go. Luffy and others shouted from the shore to Sha Chen on the boat. Okay, wait, I have to do something first. Sha Chen slowly walked to Mr. Tu who was tied to the main pole and showed a smile. But from Mr. Tu's perspective, this smile looked panicked. He couldn't help but swallowed his saliva and asked, Sha. Mr. Sha Chen, what do you want? It's nothing, I just want you to get some sleep. After saying that, Sha Chen struck Mr. Tu on the neck with a knife, knocking him unconscious. They didn't know how long their trip would last. Although Mr. Tu was tied up, it was safer to knock him out. After finishing all this, Sha Chen jumped to the shore. The moment he officially landed on the island, the system's clock in sound also followed. Ding! Check-in Alabasta successfully, armed color domineering is upgraded to advanced level. In an instant, a powerful force burst out from the depths of Sha Chen's body, and armed domineering energy automatically penetrated the body and wrapped around Sha Chen's arms. Sha Chen raised his arm slightly, and could clearly feel the domineering flow on it. Liu Ying. Sha Chen was a little surprised to check into the high-level armed color hockey. He originally thought that he would check out the Conqueror's hockey first. It seems that the system wants him to be a partial student. However, Sha Chen is quite satisfied with this result. After all, intermediate to advanced is a qualitative change. Conqueror's domineering will not have much impact on his strength even if he changes from elementary to intermediate. Because Ba Tang can only be mastered when you are advanced. As for the armed color, you can master Ryu Sakura from intermediate to advanced level. This is a skill that Luffy only learned after the first round of teaching from Teacher Kai. Now he can break through the defense even if he is facing Teacher Kai, instead of just trying to sober him up. Sha Chen, why are you still standing there? Let's go. Luffy waved and shouted not far from Sha Chen. Coming. Everyone, you are all familiar to many people in Baroque Studio. For the convenience of our movement, it is necessary to dress up a little. Vivi said to several people. Let's replenish supplies here now, and then go to the next destination, Yuba. Chopper, let's go. The two of us are going shopping, you find a place to wait for us. The rest of you have been seen by one or other of their members, it's inconvenient. Sha Chen said to Chopper. Quote. Shouldn't you be the one who is seen the most? Zoro was a little confused. Probably. Sha Chen nodded. But I have knowledge, and domineering power. Which of you does? Sha Chen's words directly blocked everything they wanted to say, and both of them felt a little uncomfortable. At the same time, they became more determined to learn how to see and hear. Bye, Chopper, let's go. Walking on the street of rapeseed flowers in the city, Sha Chen couldn't help but look left and right curiously. This was his first time to come to this kind of city in the desert, whether it was in his previous life or now. It feels like an exotic flavor. Sha Chen came to a clothing store and walked in. The men's clothes inside were all dull and ugly. On the contrary, the women's clothes include ugly ones and the dancing girl styles that Sanji bought in the original book. Seeing this, Sha Chen can understand why Sanji wants to buy that kind of clothes. If it were him, he would also buy this kind of clothes. There is no other reason, he just likes to look at it. Hacho. At this moment, Chopper next to Sha Chen couldn't help sneezing a few times, showing an expression of despair. Sha Chen, the smell here smells so bad. I almost forgot that because Chopper's nose is too sensitive, perfume that smells good to others is like poison to him. And the clothes of these dancing girls are more or less sprayed with a little perfume, which is why Chopper can't stand it when he comes here. After thinking for a while, Sha Chen said to Chopper, wait for me outside, I'll go out after I finish picking. Okay, Chopper nodded, and then walked out. He really couldn't stand the smell. As soon as Chauba left, Sha Chen looked at the various styles of clothes in front of him with bright eyes. Let him choose carefully. After a while, Sha Chen bought all the things he wanted to buy, but when he was about to go back, something unexpected happened. Because his attention was focused on the surrounding shops, he did not always use the color of knowledge to perceive the surroundings as he said when he came, so. Yo, Captain Smoker, what a coincidence. Demon King Sha Chen. Looking at the man in front of him, Smoker looked solemn. The injury I suffered last time is still aching now. What are you doing here? Come and buy something. Sha Chen spread his hands and said. The pirate just came here to buy something. Well, you don't believe me after I told you, so what can I do? Sha Chen was a little helpless. Why is it that no one believes the truth these days? So, what are you going to do now, Captain Smoker? Sha Chen looked at Smoker and said calmly. Of course I want to arrest you. As he spoke, white smoke began to emit from Smoker's body. If that's what you think, I advise you to save it. I think you should understand the difference in strength between us. You can't be my opponent. So what, even if I'm not your opponent, as long as I'm still a marine, I can't possibly allow a pirate like you to get away with it. Hey, be careful what you say. What do you mean by a pirate like me? Have I ever done anything? Sha Chen replied unceremoniously. Even if you haven't done anything, it's only temporary. Pirates are pirates and they can never change their evil nature. Hey, when did you, a white-haired, start talking like a kainu? Sha Chen is a little unhappy. If I talk to you politely, why don't you bite your nose and show your face? In that case. Sha Chen's eyes turned cold, and he appeared in front of Smoker in the next moment. Liu Ying's weapon was wrapped around his fist, and he hit Smoker's stomach hard. Smoker was still wondering whether Sha Chen had seen a kainu, but at some point Sha Chen appeared in front of his face, and his pupils suddenly shrank. The next second I felt a sharp pain in my stomach, then my eyes went black, I lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Why bother? Sha Chen looked at Smoker, who fell to the ground, and said calmly. If it weren't for the fact that Smoker is a marine with a real sense of justice, he would have sent him down to drink tea with Ku Yuan. For this kind of marine, if he didn't really offend him, he would most likely not kill him. This is not to say that he is a virgin, but because the pirate world still needs such a marine to maintain it. Although he is a pirate, he actually doesn't like most pirates. Just like Smoker said, most pirates burn, kill, loot, and do all kinds of evil. Killing civilians is simply commonplace and they can do it easily. In a sense, they are even more sinful than the celestial dragons. But you can't beat someone to death with a stick. Just like him, he must be a good pirate, right? Well, at least that's what he thinks. Then Sha Chen turned to look at Chopper and said, Chopper, let's go, it's time to go back to find Luffy and the others. I was dragged by this idiot marine for a while. Who knows what will happen if we go back too late. After some time, Sha Chen looked at the 5 people staying where they were and couldn't help but hold his forehead slightly. What you worried about still happened. Nami, where is that idiot Luffy? I don't know. Nami shook his head. He was still here at the beginning, but he disappeared in the blink of an eye. That idiot always causes trouble for others. These are the clothes I bought. Please put them on and let's go find him together. Sha Chen pretended to look normal and took out the clothes from the system space and handed them to them. After a while, Sha Chen, this dress belongs to a dancing girl, right? Vivi asked uncertainly. I don't know. I just thought it looked good, so I bought it. Sha Chen said as if he didn't know anything. At this time, Sanji came over and hugged Sha Chen's shoulders, giving him a secret thumbs up. Sha Chen also responded with his eyes. Men know men best. But one thing to say, Vivi's money is quite sufficient. Golden apple, you can live 1,000 years if you eat one. Really? Chopper and Usopp asked in shock as they looked at the golden apples in the hands of the merchant in front of them. Of course it's true. You two are so sincere. You only need 1,000 belly. You can take these golden apples. The shop owner said to the two of them with an expression like, I've lost money, but he was secretly laughing in his heart. We have fooled 2 fools again. Boss, is this apple originally golden, or was it painted with paint the day after tomorrow? A voice asked quietly. Of course it's natural, the merchant replied subconsciously, but suddenly he seemed to realize something and hurriedly turned his head to look. Sha Chen was seen pulling back the cloth behind him and watching his clerk apply dye there. This. Sweat instantly fell from the merchant's owner's forehead. Ho ho, don't tell me, although this golden apple is fake, it does taste good. Zoro said after taking a bite of the golden apple in his mouth. It's really okay, especially the layer of juice on top, which makes the taste of the apples go up a notch. Sha Chen said lightly. Sha Chen just wanted to expose that boss, but unexpectedly discovered that the dye he used to apply it was actually a golden juice. As a result, the original crackdown on counterfeiting turned into coercion. He directly threatened the boss to bring him a big bag of apples and a big bucket of the juice. If he didn't give it, he would expose him and let everyone know that he was a liar. After this series of operations, now each of them has eaten free golden apples. Since Smoker shouts that pirates are evil every day, then it's not too much for him to do some things that pirates should do, right? While thinking, Sha Chen took another bite of the apple. So sweet. Ace, why are you here? Just as a group of them were walking, a shout suddenly came from a restaurant nearby. The moment they heard this voice, everyone looked over. Not surprisingly, their target was found. At this time, in the restaurant, Luffy looked at Ace in front of him with a happy face. He originally just wanted to change his taste and go out to eat something else, but he didn't expect that he would get something unexpected. He met his brother Ace, who went to sea 3 years earlier than him. He was undoubtedly in an excited mood at this moment, and even the speed of stuffing food into his mouth was a little slower. And due to Sha Chen's action, Smoker, who was supposed to be here, also disappeared. The two just started chatting while eating in the restaurant. Luffy, are you full? Ace suddenly asked Luffy. It's okay, not very full. Hearing this, Ace had a smile on his face. Then, do you want to see who can eat more? Luffy was stunned for a moment, and then he and Ace started gobbling up the things on the table at the same time. When both of them noticed that the other party started eating without saying hello, they pointed at each other and said, "You cheated." The next moment, the two of them started cooking again. All I can say is that they are indeed brothers, their movements are exactly the same. When Sha Chen and others entered the restaurant, they saw Luffy and Ace lying on the chairs with their big bellies, looking like they were full. Ace turned to look at Luffy and smiled. Luffy, I won." Luffy's face was full of reluctance. Hiccup, "I lost again." "Ha ha ha. Luffy, if you want to beat me, you have to practice more." Hiccup. "Ace," Sha Chen whispered softly, his eyes falling on Ace. It was hard to let go of the anger in his previous life, but now he was sitting in front of him alive and being reasonable. Sha Chen was a little excited. Ace has always been a character he likes very much, but unfortunately he was killed by Akainu to save Luffy in the battle at the top. At that time, like countless Hami, he covered his quilt and burst into tears. "It's great to see Ace alive now." Sha Chen didn't hesitate, walked over and grabbed Luffy's mouth. "Luffy, can you explain why you are here?" "Well, I want to change the taste," Luffy said guiltily, touching his fingers lightly. "Then why didn't you tell us?" Sanji also asked. "I forgot. In this case, you have to find a way to pay for your meal." Nami turned his head and said calmly, "Ah, no, I don't have any money." Luffy quickly put on a pitiful look hoping to gain Nami's sympathy, but Nami didn't even look at him. At this moment, Ace next to him spoke. "Sorry, you are Luffy's companions, right? My brother has caused trouble for you." Huh, everyone who heard this couldn't help but turn their heads, and then they discovered Ace sitting nearby. Judging from the situation, he seemed to know Luffy. They thought he was a passerby just now. "Your brother, you mean Luffy?" Usopp asked in shock. "That's right," Ace nodded. "I've never heard him say he has an older brother." Sanji asked doubtfully. "Is that so?" Ace had a look of surprise on his face, then turned to look at Luffy dissatisfied. "Luffy, you've been with your friends for so long and you didn't even mention your brother, right?" "Ah, I forgot." Everyone fell down. "You really are." Ace was a little speechless, feeling a little tired of having such an idiot brother in front of him. "By the way, Ace, what are you doing here?" Luffy asked curiously. "Me, I'm here to deal with something." "Are you chasing Blackbeard?" At this time, Sha Chen, who had been silent next to him, spoke. "Huh." Ace turned to look at Sha Chen, and then asked uncertainly. "Demon King Sha Chen." "It's me." Sha Chen nodded. "How did you know about this?" Ace did not answer directly, but asked Sha Chen curiously. "I have a wide range of information channels, so I know a lot more things." "Yes, Sha Chen is very powerful, he knows everything," Luffy said excitedly from the side. "Is that so?" Ace thought thoughtfully. Then he said, "Forget it, it doesn't matter how you know it, it's not something that needs to be concealed. I am indeed hunting down Blackbeard. He was once a member of the Whitebeard Pirates, and he was also a member of my team. But he broke an unforgivable iron law on the ship." At this point, Ace's eyes turned cold and he continued. "He killed his companions and ran away. That guy is absolutely unforgivable. As the captain, I have the obligation to hunt him down to comfort the souls of my dead companions." "That, if I said you were no match for him, would you still go after him?" Sha Chen said, looking at Ace quietly. "How is that possible, Sha Chen? Ace is very strong. That Blackbeard is definitely no match for Ace." Before Ace could refute, Luffy jumped out and said angrily. Sha Chen didn't bother Luffy, but still stared at Ace, wanting to hear his thoughts. Ace also looked at Sha Chen like this, as if he wanted to see something from his expression, but unfortunately, he found nothing. After a while, Ace looked away, took a sip of water on the table and said, "Well, I don't know how you came to this conclusion, but you may not know much about my strength. Just like Luffy said, I'm very strong." Ace's tone contained confidence in himself and distrust in Sha Chen. In his opinion, Sha Chen might have seen Blackbeard take action at some point, and then thought he was very strong. But the problem is that he is sure that today is the first time he sees Sha Chen, so it is absolutely impossible for Sha Chen to know his strength. He felt that Sha Chen should have inferred Luffy's strength from Luffy's strength. He felt that he was not very strong, but only he knew his own strength best. The gap between him and the current Luffy is not that big. However, he did not directly refute Sha Chen. After all, he was Luffy's partner, so he still had to give him some face. Sha Chen, on the other hand, looked at Ace's expression and knew that he didn't trust him, and couldn't help but feel a little helpless. But think about it, if he were in Ace's perspective and a newcomer who had just come out of Donghai told him that he couldn't beat so-and-so, he probably wouldn't take it to heart. In this case, it seems that strength can only speak for itself. If possible, he still doesn't want Ace to face Blackbeard. Blackbeard is indeed not something Ace can defeat. What's more, his darkness fruit has great restraint against devil fruit users. Thinking of this, Sha Chen said directly to Ace, "Ace, let's have a fight. If I win, how about you don't go to Blackbeard? Because if you can't even beat me, you're definitely no match for Blackbeard." Huh, Ace narrowed his eyes after hearing this, stood up and stared at Sha Chen seriously. After a while, he said, "Forget it, there's no need." Sha Chen was a little speechless. Looking at this situation, Ace still didn't believe him. A confident child, when you suffer a loss, you will know the value of your brother Chen's words. "Sha Chen, is that Blackbeard really as strong as you say?" Luffy suddenly asked. Along the way with Sha Chen, he thought he knew Sha Chen's strength very well. At least in his opinion, Ace couldn't beat Sha Chen. At first, when Sha Chen said Ace couldn't beat Blackbeard, he also subconsciously stated that Ace was very strong. But now looking at Sha Chen's expression, he felt that the Blackbeard was really not simple, otherwise Sha Chen wouldn't take him so seriously, so he asked this question. "Very strong." Sha Chen nodded. "You may not have any idea when I say this. I will give you a specific example and you will know. Ace, red-haired Shanks, you understand. Well, one of the 4 emperors of New World, I went to meet him before." Ace replied. "What, Ace, you went to see Shanks?" Hearing this, Luffy grabbed his neck and shouted. "Yes, I have always heard you mention him before. It happened that I heard the news that he was on an island when I first went to sea, so I went over to meet him, and we drank wine all night, ha ha ha." That's it. Luffy showed a happy smile on his face, took off the hat on his head and put it in his hands, thinking to himself, "Shanks, I will definitely become one piece." "So what do you mean by mentioning red hair?" Ace couldn't help but ask. "What do you think of the red-haired man's strength?" Sha Chen asked lightly. Ace. Upon hearing this, Ace couldn't help but look at Sha Chen as if he were looking at a fool, then rolled his eyes and said, "The red-haired one is one of the 4 emperors, a pirate of the same class as my father. What do you think of his strength? Then what do you think your chances of winning against the red-haired man are?" Sha Chen asked again. Hey, kid, are you looking for trouble?" Ace was a little dissatisfied. Although he said he was confident in himself, he was not arrogant enough to think that he could compete with the red-haired man. You must know that when he challenged his father before, he was so abused that he was unable to fight back. Although he thinks that his father is the strongest, even the red-haired one is not as good as him, but they are also 4 emperors after all, and the most he can fight against them is the older little Kurami. "So, do you know where the injury on the red-haired face came from?" Sha Chen asked again. "No, how could I?" Ace was a little impatient at this time, but suddenly he seemed to have grasped some key information. He asked solemnly, "You mean the injury on the red-haired face was caused by the black beard?" "That's right." Sha Chen nodded. Upon hearing this, the look on Ace's face instantly became serious, and he was no longer as relaxed as before. He didn't ask why Sha Chen knew the news, and there was no need for Sha Chen to lie to him. The news that the injury on the red-haired face was caused by Blackbeard really made him a little unsure. If it were him, he wouldn't have the confidence to leave the same scar on the red hair. Ace was silent for a long time and didn't speak for a long time. After a while, he looked at Sha Chen and said, "Thank you for providing this information, I will think about it carefully." Sha Chen took a deep look at Ace and said nothing more. He's already said what needs to be said, and if Ace still doesn't listen, there's nothing he can do. Smoking man. Suddenly, Luffy's roar attracted Sha Chen's attention. The smoking man. Sha Chen is a little confused. Isn't it the only one who can be called the smoking man by Luffy? Looking along Luffy's line of sight, Sha Chen saw someone who surprised him. Smoker, isn't it, so lingering? I just suffered a blow from his Ryu Ying hockey, and now I can meet him in this small restaurant. It's just that Smoker looked a little embarrassed at this time. Most of his body was leaning on Dusky's body, and there was a faint trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. And he coughed twice from time to time. But even though he looked like this, the cigar in his mouth was still there as always. Sha Chen was really afraid that he would choke himself to death the next time he coughed. At the same time that Sha Chen and others discovered him, Smoker also discovered Sha Chen and others. There was no way. Luffy's voice was too loud. Smoker's eyes flashed with joy when he saw Sha Chen and others. Straw Hat Boy, Demon King Sha Chen, Portgas d'Ace, they are all here. The remaining people, aren't we human beings? Why, Captain Smoker, do you still want to arrest us with your current seriously injured body? It seems unrealistic, Sha Chen said lightly. He is very aware of the power of his blow, and after such a short period of time, he can't recover much at all. Smoker is probably barely able to even stand now. I have to arrest you, but it's not me who will arrest you, but someone else. Hey, what do you mean, are you looking for help? Sha Chen asked with a slight smile, not worried at all that Smoker might be looking for help. With his current strength, he wouldn't care even if Smoker asked the Lieutenant General for help. Smoker came to Alabasta this time without permission from above. He didn't believe that the other party could find a substitute general or even a general. As the top management of Marine, you are very busy, okay. I hope you can still laugh later. Smoker said with a smile. It can be seen that he is very confident. As Smoker finished speaking, a tall but thin-looking man slowly walked into the restaurant. When Sha Chen saw this person, his expression changed from indifferent to serious. At the same time, Ace also recognized the person, and the expression on his face instantly became exactly the same as Sha Chen's. Only Luffy and the others, who didn't know this man, still looked confused at this time, but they already vaguely felt something was wrong. Ever since the man at the door came in, the air seemed to have solidified. Even Sha Chen, who had always had confidence on his face, now lost his usual composure. Seeing this, Zoro couldn't help but asked curiously, who is this man? He can actually make you show such an expression. Hearing this, Sha Chen did not look away. His eyes were always on the man opposite, and then he said solemnly, General of Marine Headquarters Aokiji. General of the Headquarters. This news was like a bombshell, which shocked everyone present. Whether it was Zoro or the other civilians eating here, their eyes were all staring out at this moment. Only one person looked a little confused at the scene in front of him. Luffy looked at the people around him and asked curiously, what are your expressions? Is the general of the Marine Headquarters very powerful? Can you please remove the word? Nami said angrily. General, that is one of Marine's highest combat capabilities. Do you understand the value of the highest combat capability? Luffy thought about it for a while but still didn't understand, so he simply gave up and said with a nonchalant smile, it doesn't matter what his highest combat power is, just knock him away. As soon as Luffy said these words, everyone's eyes turned to him. And they all have the same look, that is, looking at an idiot. Even Ace didn't want to admit that Luffy was his brother at this moment. What a shame. No, are you so brave? Are you really afraid of those who don't know? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.